All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started tonight. First of all, thank you all for coming out tonight. We're looking forward to having this dialogue with you. My name is Kara Bowyer. I'm the Director of Entitlements for Tract. A couple things before we start. For those who don't know, restrooms are out in the hall to the right, all the way at the end of the hall. There's a water fountain out to the left. Hopefully you all saw snacks and bottles of water out in the hallway when you came in. Please, at any point, feel free to get up, do what you need to do, get a snack, get recharged, get hydrated. So those will be available all the time. Also, please sign in on the sign-in sheets that are out in the hall if you have not already. That is information that the county collects as to who has attended the meeting, so it is important that folks sign in. So please do that on your way out or at some point during the presentation or Q&A. With that, I think Carrie will come up from the county and say a few things, and then we'll get kicked off.
Test these out. Can y'all hear me? Okay. Okay. Can everyone hear me?
Louder.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Not louder.
Louder.
Talk louder. Better? I'm happy to test this out when the speakers come in. Better? Louder? Okay. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. My name is Carrie Ragland. I'm the Assistant Planning Director for the county. I'm also one of the case planners for this application. And I'd like to also introduce Adam Barber, who's here with me as well. He is also one of the, he's the second case planner for this request. And we will be tag teaming this project, so you may hear from either one of us if you have questions for staff. I just wanted to take a moment to share with folks where we are in this application process and the purpose of tonight's meeting. This is not a public hearing and no decisions are being made tonight. This is a pre-application community meeting, which is held by the applicant specifically to engage with the community and explain details of their proposal and to provide an opportunity for you all to ask questions and to provide feedback. Adam and I, as well as other county staff, including some elected and appointed officials, are here tonight to listen to the applicant and, more importantly, to listen to the community's concerns. Staff will be available to answer questions about the permitting process, but most questions tonight should be directed to the applicant for them to answer directly while they're here. After tonight's meeting, staff will continue to work with the applicant to address community concerns before they file for the formal conditional use permit application. I know we've had a couple of folks ask when the formal public hearings will be held. We do not have any public hearings scheduled at this point, as that depends on when the applicant files their formal application. Once that occurs, the request will go before the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors in 2 separate meetings. So there will be at least 2 more opportunities for public input. Those dates, times, and location of the public hearings will all be published on the county website as well as social media. And just like Kara said, I'd like to encourage everyone to please sign in at the sign-in sheets that are provided in the hallway out front. Please print your email addresses clearly and we'll add you to the notification list so that you can be directly notified of upcoming meetings or activities as this application proceeds forward. So with that, thank you all again for being here, and I'll pass that back over to Kara.
Carrie. Oh, there we go. Before we get started, I wanted to share just a couple things about myself. Virginia is a unique place for me. I am an undergrad and a graduate alumni of the University of Virginia. For those who are Hokie fans, I redeemed myself. I married a Hokie. So I feel like we've got pretty much the territory spread here. We were actually married in Powhatan County at the Millicline Creek, right across the other side of the James River. So this is a place I've spent a lot of time. This is a place where I started my family. We lived in Virginia for almost 10 years before we moved to Colorado. So I tell you this because this is a special place, and I get it. I get that. I understand that this is a big change. And this is a big deal to your community, and it might even be a little scary to some folks. And so please understand that I know that everyone in here has an opinion, and I respect every person's opinion in this room. So my pledge to you tonight is that I will be honest and transparent. If I know the answer to a question, I will tell you the answer to the question. If I don't know the answer to a question, I will tell you I don't know the answer, and we'll find out the answer for you. And I will approach all of my information that I'm sharing in a respectful manner. And I would ask the same back from folks here. This is a dialogue between you members of the community and our project. We are in the pre-application state, so we are in a very early stage in this process. And there will be a lot more meetings and a lot more discussions to be had. So, honesty, transparency, and respect. That's what I will give everybody in this room tonight. So, let's dive in to talking about how tonight's gonna work. So, the goal tonight is to hear from as many of you as possible. I'll be sharing some information about the project, walking you through the various aspects of it, both the physical site plan as well as some of the more topical questions around water, power, generators, and the like. In the back of the room, we have a table with note cards. So when I finish the presentation, my team is going to hand me questions that have been written on those note cards. So if you have a question now or during the presentation, you should feel free to go up and put your question in those boxes up there. So after I finish the presentation, we will first go through those already submitted questions. Once we get through those, we will then open the microphones for folks who have comments. When we take comments, we will take 10 comments at a time, and then I'll respond to the questions that are in those comments, and then we'll do that again, and we'll do that again until the time runs out. Again, our goal is to hear from as many of you as possible. I've also received many emails from you to our project email address. Thank you very much for sending those in. We have done the best of our ability to incorporate them. A lot came in yesterday, so ask for a little grace. If you've emailed something and it's not included, feel free to ask the question again, because at some point we had to stop building the presentation and get ready for tonight. So if you have a question that's not answered that you have emailed, please feel free to ask it again tonight. Last thing I'll say is we've been listening. I've been reading the emails that come in from you guys. And I will say I am so impressed with the level of engagement and the amount you care about your neighborhood and your community in this process. And I appreciate that. And in the presentation tonight, we have a couple updates from our pre-application that are in direct response to what we've already heard from comments from folks in this room, your neighbors, the staff, the supervisors, the planning commissioners. We are listening, and you will see changes in tonight's presentation that show we're listening. So this is the beginning, and we're going to keep listening. So I think I went over how tonight is going to work. So who's Tract? Who are we? Tract is a master developer. So what does that mean? Master developer tends to work in large tracts of land, no pun intended, and usually identifies the uses, sets the box, the use, the height, the parking, different aspects of a development. A couple of examples. Think about a shopping center. When somebody comes in and wants to build a shopping center, they don't know every single store that's going to go in there. They don't know every single restaurant, but they're going to come in and they're going to get the site ready for those businesses. Same thing with Tract. Another example, many of you live in Mosaic, I assume, or in and around West Creek. West Creek is a master development. So if you go all the way back to 1987, when the West Creek Master Development rezoning was approved, what you had is a lot of the boundaries and specificity that you'll see tonight in our project. And so this is what Tract does. We come in, we get the approvals. We invest tens to hundreds of millions of dollars of Tract dollars in these sites to get them what we call shovel ready. And shovel ready means the horizontal construction is done. So think literally roads, sidewalks, things like that. You've all seen neighborhoods being built. The roads go in first before the houses. So that's what we do. We put in the horizontal construction, but we go one step beyond that that makes us more than just a typical developer. We will take the steps to work with the utilities to secure the power for the site. We all know that power is the end game here, and that's what's driving the timing on a lot of these projects and other things. So our team is very uniquely situated. Our executives have worked in the data infrastructure industry, going all the way back to fiber. And I heard one of them say, you know, I've been doing this since it was called telecom. So they have been in this industry for a very long time. Many of the folks in the company come from what we'll call hyperscalers. These are the Metas, the Amazons, the Oracles, the AWS, the big names that you hear. So a lot of those folks are the folks that make up our team. And in addition, we have some very specific and deep subject matter experts. We have a whole powered team. And I was telling the county earlier, they use electrons in their daily business, and that just floors me because I don't say electrons in my daily life. But we have a whole team, and a lot of them used to work for Dominion. And so we know the ins and outs of how these entities, how these utilities work. And so I am specifically on the development team. I am an urban planner by training. I've been doing real estate development for almost 25 years. Like I mentioned, I cut my teeth here in Virginia doing that, and then worked out in Colorado as well. So that's who Tract is. So why are we here? We're here because your county had the foresight to put regulations in place around data centers. And they created last November, I know many of you were involved, the TOD, the Technology Overlay District. And we are talking specifically about the TOD West, which is this hatched area. When our team took a look at the TOD and we watched back the tapes from the hearings and the meetings, and we started thinking about what this site could look like, our first goal was that it would be completely compliant with the TOD. There's several parts of the TOD that can allow for flex under a conditional use permit. We didn't even go there, even though we have a conditional use permit pending, pre-application pending. We really wanted to bring forward a project that brought to life the vision that the county had put in place. This area has been planned for economic development for nearly 50 years. So this is the place in the county that your government has decided is the best place for this type of growth. So what is a data center? So a data center, and some of you may be familiar, may not. Sorry, I do want to ask if you have signs in the room, if you could keep them down so folks sitting behind you can see. I think you guys in the front row are perfect with the signs down. That was just a request so we can make sure everybody can see. So let's talk a little about a data center. So I'm old enough, certainly, to remember my first companies having server rooms. Right? It was the weird hot room down at the end of the hall that nobody ever went in. That's essentially what the data center is. It is a large facility that houses servers, networking equipment, and information storage systems. Now, this is an example of what an inside of a data center could look like. The term AI data center is one that is so prevalent now that I just want to take a minute and talk about it. So there are actually multiple types of computing that go on in data centers. And this is important to understanding how AI fits into this conversation. There are AI learning and teaching facilities. So this is where Claude, for example, is taught. It's the brain. Then there's AI inference facilities. This is the mouth. So when I type in, what is the best way to go to Disneyland in May, and it spits me out an itinerary, that's inference. And then there's cloud computing. These are your websites, these are your emails, these are your cloud storage, whether you save to the iCloud or Google Cloud, whatever it is. So those are the three types. Physically, the AI inference and the cloud computing facilities physically are the same. The AI learning and teaching facilities look different physically. So what you're seeing mostly now is you don't have one or the other. You have hybrid. So you have hybrid data centers that include both cloud computing and storage and AI inference. The AI learning, the big ones that make a lot of headlines, there are about 50 of those in the United States out of the 4,500 data centers that exist. So less than 1% are those AI teaching facilities. So what you will see tonight is more in that hybrid AI inference cloud computing facility. So why do we need them? Our world is increasingly digital. I don't think anybody can debate that. We email, we text. The only way my teenager will talk to me half the time. Social media, mapping apps, your medical records. You can go to any hospital now and they have your entire medical history, and you're not writing down every time you sneezed in the past 10 years just because you're out of town and need some medical care. All of this stuff, your banking, your travel, making airline reservations, all of that, online shopping, we're all guilty. And, yes, search engines and artificial intelligence are part of it. But all of this is driving the need for data centers. And that's why, because as you think back, even over the past 5 years, think of our lives since COVID started. How much more digital reliance we have on Teams calls, Zoom meetings, FaceTime, all those things. That demand went up real fast. And so what's happening now, why you're seeing more and more data center applications out there, is the providers, these hyperscalers, are playing catch up to the demand we all create through our use of digital services every day. So that's why we're talking about data centers still. So I'm going to walk you through, this is our conceptual site plan. I will say there are small revisions to this since the pre-application, mostly tweaks to color at the request of staff. So if you see something that's slightly different, I want to be completely transparent. This is slightly updated. But I'm going to walk you through a couple parts of the conceptual plan. But I want to talk about what this is and what this isn't. This is a conceptual plan. This is the concept. This is a master plan. It has a lot of different words you can use. We're going to create the boxes within which future development would come in. What this is not is a site plan. This does not have the road dimensions mapped out. This does not have the engineered layouts of every building. Those are regulated at a different part in the process. So it's not that there's no regulation. We're just not there yet. So through this application, I had talked a little about the West Creek. And so I pulled these are from the West Creek proffers. I believe this one's the 87, and that's the 88. And you can see this concept has been part of Goochland County's development and planning process for a long time. So this is a master plan. This is a conceptual plan. Everything can move within boundaries. So there are things we're going to say, these will go here, these won't go there. Those can't change. But does the building go like this or this? That might change. So you can see this is not an uncommon thing, an approach to development. There may be a level of detail that you want, and that may come at a later stage in the process. But what we can do at this stage in the process is agree upon conditions, agree upon the parameters of, again, the box, the lines, that the further permits, the POD, those later steps all have to fall within, and those come in the form of conditions attached to the CUP. That's not done at the pre-application level. There were some questions that came in over email as to like, would we agree to a set of conditions? Yes. We agree to a set of conditions, and we've already been working out with the county what some of those might look like, and some of what we hear from you tonight may inform those conditions as well. So, again, walking you through, this shows 7 development areas. And so, what a development area is, these are your buildings, your substations, your roads, utilities, parking, stormwater. These areas in yellow will not be entirely paved. I think that's a really important point to say that this is not what will be paved and what will not be paved. In fact, over half of the site will not be developed. It might be disturbed, and that we might need to put a road through it for construction, something like that, but it will remain in natural state. Those are the dark green areas. So I want to talk, again, the full site, when you look at it, is 870 acres. So, some of you have asked about buildings. So I'm going to give you an example. And again, in the line of transparency, I do not know the exact layout or number of buildings on this property. So we're going to assume there are 12 buildings throughout this whole property, okay? And we're going to assume that those 12 buildings total 3 million square feet. That's a big number. It's a really big number. But what you're looking at is a site that has almost 40 million square feet of land on it. So from a density standpoint, which is how we measure things in our planning world, you are looking at roughly a 10% building area, or 0.1 FAR, floor to area ratio. So building floor to ground ratio. For comparison, the Eli Lilly facility that's coming is about 1 million square feet. They have about 10 million square feet of land, also 0.1 FAR. So when you're looking at intensity of use on the site, those two sites are comparable. Height. Again, this is pretty by the book in the TOD. 60 feet in every development area, except development area 6, which would go up to 80 feet and would have all the required building setbacks and building tapering and step backs that are required in the TOD. Access. Primary access will come off of Route 6 through a new median break that is currently with VDOT pending their review. It is included in our TIA that was submitted as part of the pre-application. In normal process, VDOT would not have approved it at this point. They have not yet approved it. We are working through that, and that will come through the remainder of the development process. But this primary access will be all operational and construction traffic. And we are happy to agree to development conditions that say that. There is an emergency access on the north part of the property along Hockett. This would be for emergency services. This would be in the event the campus, there was an accident on Route 6 and that outlet was blocked. If we can't get people out through Route 6, we have to use another way. But day-to-day operational and all construction traffic will be prohibited from using that emergency access. So everything will be coming off Route 6. Buffers and setbacks. So the TOD was very thorough in looking at both vegetated planted buffers and building setbacks. In some cases, those are the same width, in some places they aren't. So we're just gonna walk around the site and I'm gonna explain where things are. Starting down here on Route 6, 150-foot setback and buffer. So that's 150 feet of vegetation. And that same 150 feet would serve as a building setback. As you can see, along Route 6, we don't have a development area. So there would be no buildings down right along the back of that buffer because they're not in a development area. Going up Hocket, this is a 100-foot setback and buffer. Again, they overlap. So you have both a setback and a planted buffer along Hocket. As you come across the top and then down up around the golf course, you have a 250-foot planted buffer and building setback. Again, those measurements there are the same. And then across the northern part with Mosaic, this is where there are different measures. There's 250 feet of a planted vegetated buffer and a 500-foot building setback. So this green that goes around the whole perimeter of the site are your vegetated buffers. Those hatched areas up at the very top, those are your additional building setbacks that extend beyond the vegetated buffers. This is one of those new things I said that we'd be talking about tonight that's not in the pre-application. We have heard the comments and concerns around the generators and the existing residential structures. So what we're presenting tonight, what we would agree to in a development condition, is that the generator yards, so the areas in which the generators are located, would be no closer than 1,000 feet from any home in the Mosaic development and at least 500 feet from any other residential structure that borders the property. So what you're looking at, these hatched areas are the areas where generators would be precluded. So we can look up at the top here. So you have your 250-foot vegetative buffer. You have your then additional 250 feet of building setback. And then for another 500 feet, you will not have a generator yard located. There might be a building, but the generator yard would be behind that. So 1,000 feet from any home in Mosaic is the closest a generator would be located. 500 feet from every other residential structure. So we also did some of these view shed analysis. And so I will say these pictures were all taken from public right of way. We did not go on anyone's property to take them. And these were taken, all but the last one was taken in February. So we intentionally went out when there were the fewest leaves on the trees to get these pictures. So what are you looking at? So you were standing here on Basque Terrace. This. Apologies. So you were standing here. These are the homes in the picture. We have a 250-foot buffer, another 250-foot setback, and your 80-foot building is over there. So if you were standing here and you look straight across, you can understand why you don't see a building in that picture. Because it visually, as something is further away, becomes lower, and the trees are taller. That's what this shows. So we have another view from Cerulean Place, same idea. So we're standing here, looking past the house, through the vegetated buffer, through the setback to a 60-foot building, and you don't see it. And you don't see it because the trees are taller than the building.
Being examined to prove this is a fact. Your brain can pick up all of that.
So then we have Creekmore. And again, at this point, you were almost a mile from a building looking across the golf course at Creekmore. I think you understand the same thing. So, oh, sorry, this is the last one. This is the one that was taken in April because the county asked us to add a couple of view sheds to our application. So this is along Pocket. Again, you can see that the trees are taller than the buildings would be, and so it wouldn't be visible. All right, so let's move. So we're going to move away from the site plan and talk more generally about some certain topics that are critically important to understanding these facilities. First one is water. We will not use any groundwater, ever. There will be no wells. This site will be entirely served by municipal water, and on-site storage. Your wells will not be impacted. Wait. This is the other new thing we are introducing tonight. We are committing that this campus will be an air-cooled campus. We will not use water for cooling on this campus. Put in the development conditions, it will live on for the life of the property. So what does that mean? That means a lot of you have seen this number, this 2 million gallons. That's going down to 70,000 gallons per day. And that condition is actually during construction, not during operations. So your average goes from 600,000 to 35,000. This is a 95% reduction. And just to give you scale of those numbers, Mosaic uses approximately 70,000 gallons of water a day. So this is greatly reducing the water demand. And we did this because we heard from you the concerns about water. So let's switch over to power. And again, as you guys have questions, we can certainly talk through more of this. Let's talk about power. So it's said a lot that data centers pay their own way. But what does that mean? What does that even mean? Well, first of all, data centers pay for the infrastructure, the substations, the line extensions. Those all are paid for by us. When I said Tract invests its money, that's what we're investing our money in. Those upgrades. I will get to the rates in just a second. Data centers have a special rate class. They pay a different rate than residents do. And we are subject to long-term commitments with the power company that guarantee a level of revenue. So a guaranteed level of revenue helps the utility do planning, helps the utility do upgrades. So all these things actually help the grid and the system. So, whoops. Second question, Carol, why are my bills going up then? If they're paying for everything. In this country, it is estimated that our utilities today need $1.4 trillion of upgrades. I think we can all agree we are not fabulous in this country at maintaining our infrastructure. That's a result. So if we had 0 data centers, 0 anything else, there's still $1.4 trillion that utilities need to maintain and upgrade the existing system. This is why your rates are going up. Your rates are going up because natural gas is going up. We don't need to get into that debate. Extreme weather. Weather events are getting bigger and stronger, have higher impacts, and the utilities, not having maintained their facilities, are subject to these longer outages, bigger disruptions, and more costly repairs. And there's growing demand. A lot of people are phasing gas out of their houses. A lot of people are buying EVs. So I believe everyone in this room probably received a letter from Dominion in the past week or so that your bill is going up. So what that is a fuel charge. So I just want to take a second and talk to you about what the fuel charge meant. This is a pass-through cost. So Dominion buys the fuel and passes it on to its customer. So it is a one-for-one pass-through cost. There's no revenues to Dominion. This fuel charge will cover a reimbursement from the fuel costs that they had not already billed you for. You get billed every month for fuel costs. They underestimate it. So they need paid back. So it is a payback from basically the last year, and they've adjusted their projection for the year forward. So that is what you just got the bill about. That is why that aspect is going up. It has nothing at all to do with data centers and nothing to do with increased demand. It is purely a fuel charge. So where is the power coming from? So unfortunately, this isn't our decision. This is up to Dominion and the SCC, ultimately where power lines and transmission lines go. So we're gonna look at our crystal ball and give you our best guess based on our professional experience, our experience with Dominion, and our participation in what has been going on around Eli Lilly. So with Eli Lilly coming to the county, there is discussion of running a new power corridor down 288 to serve that facility. That has gone recently before the SEC's for some hearings. Probably heard about it in the news. It makes all logical sense to us that we would be fed off this same line because it literally touches our property. So if this line goes in, they need an easement from us to put the transmission line there. So it makes all sense that we would then pull from that line, and that was what would feed the site. I cannot say that 100%, the decision is not up to us. So we will get the power from where Dominion tells us. But it's real hard to look at this and not think this is where we're going to end up. The specific request around Eli Lilly includes a request for additional right-of-way to allow for additional power lines to go in that same corridor. So all signs are pointing here, but again, the decision hasn't been made, the decision isn't up to us. We talk about generators. The TOD has a lot of requirements around generators that actually are put in at the last hearing and were very thoughtfully written. They're up here. I think, the significance of, ones we'll talk a little more about are the daytime testing, the limitation on when generators can be tested, the fact that they can be used for backup power only, I'll talk about that more in a second, and the fact that they have to be tier 4 or better generators. So why tier 4? A lot of the generators that are out there and are in a lot of the facilities in Northern Virginia that a lot of us have our data points sourced from are not tier 4. Tier 4 are 90% cleaner than prior generations. There's a 90% reduction in emissions from these. So the fact that the county had the foresight to put that in the requirements is a huge benefit to this community, and that's what you would get. Again, it's a requirement of the TOD. We can rewrite it in the development condition. That's a commitment. So when do generators run? So we can't run the generators because we want to. That is not permitted. So we can't put it on because we want to avoid paying a peak demand charge. We can't put it on because we just want to pay a lower power bill. We can turn it on for testing, which is required under the permitting. We can turn it on in event of emergency. Someone else tells us to turn it on. So as the data center operator, the generators cannot be turned on by your choice. It's either required under permitting or being required in the event of emergency. So like I said, we can't do it just because we want to. So who regulates it then? It's regulated at the state level through the Department of Environmental Quality. We receive an air quality permit, and these are a lot of the components that you see in the permitting. Recent state legislature action went through that's fine-tuning some of this and will become more codified in the coming years, and we would be subject to any of those rules. So if the rules change between now and operations, we would be subject to those new permitting requirements until the time we have the permit in hand. Once you have your permit, those are the rules you follow. So what is the required testing? So we get a permit. We got to turn them on periodically to make sure they run. It's about 30 minutes once a month. And it is under a reduced load as well. So they're not run full volume, not volume, force, power. And then we record those results and we report them back to the agency for permit. This is highly, highly regulated industry, and it is all tied to the state air quality permit. So the reporting all goes through that. There is ongoing accountability. Typically, air permits are issued that allow generators to run 100 hours a year. That is ultimately decided by the agency issuing the permit, but the typical that we've seen in the state of Virginia is 100 hours a year. So the generators kind of lead us naturally into sound. So let's talk a little about sound. When we did our sound modeling, which I know a lot of you have seen as part of our application, we put that model together to demonstrate compliance with the TOD. There's two requirements in the TOD. There's a dBA requirement, which is volume, I'll call it, and there's dBc, which is frequency. The DBC requirement, this is one of the first counties we've worked in that has put this type of regulation in place. It's in response to a lot of the concerns even that I got in emails. So what do we model? So we model the everyday operation of the facility, the chillers for the building, and then we model generator testing. So generator testing is exempt from the noise requirements per the TOD. Our modeling shows that we can still meet both the DBA and DBC levels even during our testing. So again, the model was built to show compliance. So what does that mean if we're not the operator? What it means is that requirement is tied to the land. So if I sell the land, whoever buys the land has to meet that requirement. Because the CUP doesn't run to Tract, it runs with the land. So regardless of who owns, operates, leases, whatever the mechanism is, the facilities on this property, they are subject to every development condition, every requirement in the TOD, other state, local, and federal laws. So these get passed on. They're codified in our zoning, and to violate them in a later state is a zoning violation, and there are implications for that. So that's how you can be assured that whoever is operating the site is going to follow the rules. So we'll take questions in a few minutes.
Say that again.
We're going to take questions in a few minutes.
Or before that.
That's how you know they'll follow the rules.
Whatever you just said.
I don't know what I just said. Sorry. So let's talk about smell. What smells emit from a data center? The data center itself doesn't have smell. It's tantamount to a warehouse building. What does produce a smell are the generators. And so those will smell like no different than a truck or a bus going down the road. So let's keep going. So the tier 4 are already cleaner, right? So fewer smells, and smell dissipates over space. So think of it like this. If I pour a lot of perfume, so if I pour a lot of perfume and I walk past you, you're gonna smell it very strongly. If I walk to the back of the room, you're not gonna smell it anymore. So smell dissipates. It is, okay, can we please let me respectfully finish the presentation. There will be time for everyone to ask questions. So science tells us that smell dissipates by half every 10 feet. So you're having 500-foot setbacks, and I just gave another 500 feet for generator yard. So you'll be over 1,000 feet from this. So that is your main way that smell will dissipate. Again, when the generators are running, which are in very limited circumstances. Air quality permitting limits to 100 hours a year. So, air quality, very similar to smell. Emissions dissipate over space. So the best thing you can do to mitigate is to have setbacks, to have clean equipment, and to have these mitigation measures in place. All of these things will show that there is no established scientific evidence that you are sick just because you live beside a data center. So I just have a couple more things, and then we can turn to some questions. Let's talk a little about property values. The county asked me to put this in the presentation. There's no evidence that living near a data center decreases property value. So what does drive property values? What does drive property values our strong economy, good schools, a well-funded local government, parks and amenities, and well-maintained communities. Data centers contribute money to bring communities those things. And so there are two studies that have been done by George Mason University, one in Northern Virginia, one in Indiana, that show homes closer to a data center sold for more than 4% on average. And in Indiana, the example is that there was 42% growth in home prices near data center sites and 41 elsewhere.
What year? What year?
So these studies are up here. So the Northern Virginia was a 2023 study. The Indiana was 21 to 26. So last I want to talk about the community benefits. What does this bring to your community? So let's talk about private investment. This is what you want to drive the economic engine of your county, right? You guys had the amazing announcement of Eli Lilly's $5 billion investment in the county. Sorry, you had the good news of Eli Lilly's $5 billion investment into the county. This investment in this campus will be a $9 billion capital investment in the real property, in the land and the buildings, and nearly a $75 billion private investment in the equipment that goes in those buildings. So what does that translate to? Like, what does that even mean? So what it means is this expanded tax base, based on this private capital investment, will produce approximately $1 billion in new tax revenue over the first 20 years of operation of the facility. So what does that mean? I had someone ask the delta between what's today. Today, the property pays approximately $150,000 in property taxes a year. So over 20 years, it's about $3 million. This facility would pay almost $450 million in property taxes over the next 20, or the first 20 years of operation. The current land pays zero in personal property tax, and this would be almost $640 million over those first 20 years of operation. So the tax revenue that's coming into your community is game-changing. So what the county does with that is up to them. We can't tell them what to do. You can tell them what to do, but I can't. But this can be schools, this can be parks, this can be fire stations, public facilities, paying off county debt. These are all decisions that the commissioners and supervisors would be able to make with this additional tax revenue. We have had very thoughtful site planning and showing full compliance plus some with the TOD requirements. You'll have improved infrastructure in your community. You'll have new water lines, new sewer lines, new power lines, all at the cost of the developer. Jobs. So we talk generally about 2 or 3 kinds of jobs that come with data centers. The first are construction jobs, and we estimate that over the course of the construction, there would be about 1,200 jobs generated. But what's more interesting about the construction jobs is because the construction takes place in a phased time, that people have the ability to do career progression on one site. So this means someone who lives in the community today, that is an electrician's apprentice, could work on this construction, and by the time the facility was totally built and operational, they could be a master electrician without ever leaving.
We are a retirement community, ladies. I'm sorry.
And in terms, so it offers great opportunity for people in the county, in the community, in the trades professions, to have very well-paying jobs. We also estimate that from a permanent operational standpoint, there would be about 350 permanent jobs. So these are jobs that work at the facility. So these are not remote jobs. We get that question a lot. So these would be people who work there. These are janitors, groundskeepers. These are electricians. These are technical workers, technical computing jobs. They are a range of jobs. And if you look, these jobs typically pay more than those jobs would in another industry. So the last thing that I want to mention is about what we call indirect jobs, and these are a little harder to precisely see, but again, not our study. Third-party study done by JLARC in the state of Virginia shows that for every permanent job, there are 6 what they call indirect or induced jobs in the community. So other jobs are produced in the community as a result of these new permanent jobs come in. These are retail workers. These are businesses that make the parts or supplies that go into these facilities. These are the people who make cement. These are the people who do landscaping. So all these jobs stem from this one, it's a spider web effect out. So again, to just quantify it, there are about 19,000 jobs in Goochland County today, or sorry, as of December 2025. The construction jobs would add about 6% of jobs to the county. The permanent jobs are almost 2%. So these are not insignificant number. So to wrap up, I did this for you, Mr. Lab. The 4 S's. Will you see it? Will you smell it? Does it have sound? Does it will make me sick? And I think what I've gone through tonight produces the evidence and the facts that this is not the case. So we are going to turn now to the questions that have been submitted on note cards. Thank you for folks who did that. My team's going to come up and hand me some note cards. We're going to go by topic for these, just to kind of keep everything orderly and organized in at least my head. I feel like this is a very official thing, Erin's in it. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Now, what I was just told, by Erin, is what we have done is we have read all of the questions that you have submitted, the comments you have submitted. We have grouped these into like topics. So the exact words of the question you asked may not be the words that come out of my mouth. Some of this I've already covered in the presentation. If you do not feel, if you've submitted a question and do not feel I've answered it, you are welcome to reiterate your question when we do the open mic Q&A. So I'm not meaning to cut anyone off. So the first question I have is, where will this power come from? So I think we went over that it will likely be from the Eli Lilly line, but it is not ultimately our decision. Do you have any plans to tap into the natural gas line that runs through the property? No. That was an easy one. This says, if asked by the Department of Energy and grid operator to go offline during extreme heat or cold, has happened multiple times this year in Virginia, will the tech park go dark after exhausting battery backup or run its 287 diesel generators 24 hours a day for several days? If we are required by the Department of Energy and the utility to run our generators, we have to run them. So the tech park won't go dark. And here's why it won't go dark. Because the businesses that run their data through this can't go dark. So you don't want the facility to go dark if those are your medical records and you end up in the hospital. You don't want those sites to go dark if that's your banking and you're trying to close on a mortgage. So no, the tech park will not go dark. We will run generators until we are told not to run them, and we don't actually have the ability to decline to do that if we're asked in that capacity. My team rewrote them, so I don't have the original cards. So here, I'll actually, Carrie, you might want to answer this one. How can the county approve without in-depth engineering studies about water requirements? And if completed, when will they know, or what are the results? So how could the county approve this project without in-depth water studies?
Back to that question about the 287 generators, ask follow-up questions.
There will be time to ask follow-up questions in a few minutes.
Staff omitted it on purpose.
You are welcome to re-ask the question in a few minutes.
What about our email question?
So the question was asked about water. I know that the county is evaluating that now, what the capacity would be, but we don't have that information yet. That is part of our analysis at this time, in this pre-application phase.
Thanks, Carrie. All right. Generators. Generators are expected to produce 100 to 110 decibels at the Mosaic property line, making the neighborhood unlivable. How will you compensate neighbors forced for health reasons to sell, if even possible, for less than what they paid for their homes? So our sound study modeled that it will not be that loud at the property line. We are not permitted to violate that. If the sound levels at the property line exceed the requirement in the TOD and in our development conditions, we'll be issued a zoning violation. And that goes through a process that eventually can shut down the facility. And I've already talked about why we don't want facility to shut down. So this question about 100 and 110 decibels is not consistent with our monitoring and will put us in violation. So, it is the perimeter property line of the project. Noise from data centers is bad for our health and disrupts our peace. Why should we have to tolerate this at all? So this is a complicated question. Your county has designated this area as an area that is appropriate for this development. Your county has designated this area as an economic development area for the county for nearly 50 years. And so we are merely
November.
All right, so the next question is, what sound barriers are included in the project? So the answer is whatever is required for us to meet the sound ordinance. So are there specific things already targeted? There's some assumptions in the sound model that include generator walls. But in reality, the operator has to do whatever they need to do. If they need to plant trees, if they need to put mufflers on equipment, if they need to buy different equipment, they have to meet that requirement. And the burden to meet that requirement is on the operator, is on the person running the facility. And so whether that takes the shape of parapet walls, berms, landscaping, there's a lot of things you can do to mitigate sound. That's what they would have to do.
So what would be as loud as legally possible?
It would meet the requirements that are in the TOD. The noise study tested with 10 generators operating. What would the noise level be when all generators are operating in an emergency situation? So we haven't modeled that, but I talked to staff earlier, and that is something that we can model and information that we can get as part of our submission. So again, being as we're in the pre-application phase, this is exactly the feedback we want, more information that's needed. So stay tuned on that one. Goochland is a dark sky community. What's being planned to comply? If there has to be dark sky lighting put in, we'll have to do that. If there has to be other dark sky components that the county has adopted, we would have to install those and comply with them. All right, with use of only 10% of the land for buildings, as you claim, why can you not increase setbacks in generator yards more than 500 or 1,000 feet from residential? So again, as I mentioned, when we originally designed this pre-application, we went to demonstrate compliance. We will take that feedback. We already took some feedback and gave the additional generator setbacks that I talked about tonight. And so we'll go back. Let us go back and look at that and take this as a point of feedback. The next one is setback and buffers are poor. How would you make them better? I think I just talked about that. Let us go back and look at it. This is the feedback we are looking for in shaping our application.
It says, why is there a 250-foot buffer for A2 and A1 adjoining properties? The board passed 500 feet. I quite honestly would have to go back. I regrettably don't have the full TOD memorized, but if it says 500 feet, we'll make it 500 feet. What comprises a vegetated buffer? Why not leave the existing vegetation? We will take steps to leave the existing vegetation where it's possible. Where it may need supplemented, we can plant new stuff. Where it may need to be cleared for health of the forest, health of the vegetation, which is often a reason when you go into these older vegetated areas that there are a lot of dead trees and it's actually better to remove them and plant new. But if we can leave the existing vegetation, that's what we want to do too. That is really effective screening. Those are beautiful trees that are out there. And so I think our hope would be that we can leave that everywhere we can. When chillers are added, what will the height of the building be? You know, I was asked this question this afternoon. Do you guys know the height of a chiller? – 10 to 12 feet. The building would be 60 to 80 feet, 60 or 80 feet, depending on where it is. Excluding construction and development, how many jobs will each data center create and sustain within the community? So I think I talked about that, about the 350 permanent jobs. After construction is complete and there are no longer construction jobs for building the data centers, can you provide an example of long-lasting community benefits? So again, this goes to the permanent jobs that are created, the indirect jobs, we talked about that. The economic stability of the community, the ability for your supervisors to have additional revenues, to pay off the CIP, to do the CIP improvements that have been sitting around for decades not funded, that they would now have the tax revenues to do that. And those are things that are community benefits. Those are the parks, those are the road improvements, those sort of things. What benefits do local taxpayers gain as a result of the CUP? So this question is a little out of my control, but we have seen in other places the ability to lower residential property tax as a result of data center taxes. So this is a good question, one we haven't talked about yet. Will you be putting money or surety bonds or trusts for the decommissioning of the data center? So that is not an industry standard, but let me talk about the lifespan of these buildings. The buildings are constructed in such a way that the equipment inside can be changed fairly easily. In fact, it is refreshed every 5 to 7 years, just because of use, new technology, those sort of things. So the physical buildings themselves can be adapted based on the changes of equipment. There is nothing that is physically built into the building that would make it obsolete. So I know there's a question around, but we're not going to need data centers in 5 years. We may have to agree to disagree, but when we talk about our increasingly digital world, I have a hard time envisioning that we're so far behind already that in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, we won't need them. But nonetheless, what you have are essentially warehouse buildings. There are environmental regulations around cleanup necessary, equipment disposal, those sort of things. So, you know, when we talk about decommissioning, I would say it's no different than any other warehouse, any other structure, any other Walmart. You know, you have buildings and you look for ways to use them. There's nothing in the way these are built that would preclude them from other uses in the future. What plan is being made to restore the site to natural state if the data center becomes obsolete? I think I just answered that. If someone has more questions, you can feel free to ask those. How will this affect our property value? I did explain the things that have been found through studies to drive property values.
have to do with the community, have to do with the schools, have to do with the amenities, have to do with the services. And that data centers provide tax revenues that improve all those things. And so these studies, these third-party studies that were conducted out of educational institutions demonstrate that we have not seen that trend. Is Tract agreeing to pay the $50,000 rollback taxes? Or is Goochland planning on waiving that as an incentive? We have not discussed incentives with the county at all, and Tract is not seeking any incentives as part of this development. This one I may also have to pass to the county. Did the county consider other locations? I don't know if somebody, Carrie or somebody else wants to address why this area was chosen.
Is this one working now? So the question, I'm not sure if it's specific to this application, but this is not a county application. This was the applicant coming forward proposing this specific location. So the county is not pinpointing this one particular, if that was the question.
I'm not sure if that was the question or why the TOD was placed here.
Website says because of the overlay.
I mean, I believe this area has been comp planned for economic development for decades. It's what's in the plan.
We can do some of the county follow-up questions at the end as well. If some of them feel like county, that way we can maybe answer some.
That works. How did it work out seamlessly to have the project modeling meet all Goochland requirements within 6 months of the TOD being established, and where? So I think this speaks a little to Tract's experience in developing data centers. That we do know what is needed to bring a site online. We do know what regulations are put in place and how to follow those. And we were able to put together an application through the willing sellers to bring forward the project that does fully comply with the regulations. That is Tract's brand. We bring forward compliant projects. And so the rules were put in place, and we were able to work quickly and put something together. There was nothing nefarious going on. We did not have the site under contract until after the TOD was approved. Who do I work for and who is paying my services? I work for Tract. I am paid by Tract. That's the question that's written. Will you abide by Senator Mark Warner's new legislation on data center and environment concerns? If that becomes law, absolutely. I will be honest, I have not reviewed it in its entirety. But to the extent it becomes law, of course we have to abide by it. May there be tenants in it that might not get passed that we could look into? Sure. But we need to do a little more investigation into that.
Can you explain what that is?
Senator Mark Warner has introduced legislation around data centers, and again, candidly, I will say I've not read it in its entirety, but he's brought it before the U.S. Senate to have some federal regulations around data centers and environmental concerns. So it's just been introduced into the Senate, is my understanding. If a data center is allowed, please limit the initial CUP to 2 years. If you meet all requirements and promises, it should be renewed. If not, it should not be renewed. So within the first 2 years after approval, the site will not be operational. It just takes that long. And the operation of the site is driven by the delivery of power. So I'll take a minute and talk a little about that timeline. So we have been working with Dominion to study the site for 900 megawatts of power. So typically substations come in 300 megawatt increments. So we'd be looking at 3 substations for the site. So Dominion is studying it, and I believe, Brandon, we just came out of substation planning, and we are moving into transmission planning. And then we would be assigned a queue position at that point. I'm looking to my power expert over here. Thumbs up. So at that point, we're looking at power delivery somewhere between 2030 and 2032 for the first substation. Then the second one would come online subsequent after that. We don't have control as to what that timing is. We work very closely with Dominion. So when we back up from that, so let's just use 2030, and I don't know if that's the number. Again, Dominion's in control of that, not me. So let's say it's 2030. So when the operators really become interested in the site is when they know power's coming. So when we know that's coming in 2030, they're looking for sites about 18 months before that because they have to build a building. That's about how long it takes to build a building. So what will happen between now and then? So what we do as Tract is we come in and start to get the site ready. Put the roads in, we do the improvements to Route 6. We put in the infrastructure, we bring the water lines down, the sewer lines. All that work is being done on the site so that about 18 months before the power arrives at the site, we have a pad ready for someone to build a building. And then a couple things can happen. We have a sister company called Fleet Data Centers who can come in and vertically build the building. They would then lease that building out to an operator to operate the facility, but Fleet would own the building. A hyperscaler could come in, Microsoft, AWS, Meta, the whole list, could come in and build the building themselves and operate the facility. So it's done a lot of different ways. So we use this term called the buy box. And so that buy box for those operators is about 18 months before power comes. So if we, again, hypothetically have power in 2030, we back up a year and a half, we're in 2028. So if this was approved, construction would probably start pretty quickly to start to get the site ready. We have to go through all of the permitting that's required, which takes some time. So we would need to go through various processes at the county level, engineering plans, site plans, plan of development, all these different permitting requirements. We have state permits we'd have to go get for the wetlands and the streams that we're trying to protect and mitigate. So we would do all that permitting. And once we have those permits in hand, then we would be looking to start construction. So I totally lost what the original question was, but we do not have a queue position yet. Is that correct, Brandon? That's correct. So we do not have one yet, but we are out of the first stage of planning with Dominion and moving into the second stage, and then we would be assigned a queue position. There is no agreements at this stage. Nobody would have an agreement at this stage. That's not part of their process. We'll have Brandon answer that. Those were all the pre-submitted questions that I got. I do want to say those of you who had comments and not specific questions, I have those, so they're not being lost. We also have all of your original cards, so we will be reading through all these. What I'd like to do at this time is invite folks who may have not gotten their question answered, had additional questions, to come down to the microphone. So the way we're going to work this is we're going to take 10 questions, and then I'm going to respond to your questions, and then we'll do 10 more. Again, we're doing this format so we can hear from as many of you as possible and be able to get the question answered. So I'm actually going to come off the stage because it's hot up here.
Yes, he is a great.
All right, can everyone still see me if I'm down here?
Yeah.
No. Okay, do I need to go back up on the hot stage?
No, you're
Or, yes, stage. Okay, I'll go back. So while I'm going I will mention, we are going to ask you to limit your comments to 2 minutes, again, in the effort of courtesy to all the other folks who are here and might have questions tonight. My colleagues, Aaron and Joshua, are down here. They will be flagging you if you run over in time. And we will kind of keep doing this. It is about 20 after 7 now. We can do this until, we get through questions or hit 10 o'clock. So, no, we are not going to cede time. Again, we want to hear from as many people as we can. So we will not be ceding time like is done in public hearing. Yes, if you have more than one question, great point, Erin, thank you. If you have more than one question, you're welcome to ask them all really fast in 2 minutes. Or if you hear something later, you're welcome to come back down and answer more questions. This isn't a one and done. So you should feel free again. If you use 2 minutes and have more questions, you certainly can get back in line. I can go ahead and start with you if you'd like.
My question is, as a brain specialist working at VCU Medical Center, I would like you to answer questions related to data center pollution and issues of damage to insects. 1 out of 3 bites of our food depend on the animal kingdom, bees, etc. In the human kingdom, we have issues of diseases and brain cancers going up 400% in adults in this country right now that we can monitor. Europe monitors better than we do because a lot of our research is not published. And so we have the issue of children and adults and pets and our farm animals having rising issues of brain damage and tissue damage. So how do you respond to any research you've done? I'm asking you now for your research on how it harms not 20 feet, not 100 feet, but thousands of feet away from these centers.
As I said, we are going to take 10 speakers and then I will answer.
Poorly organized meeting for a public subject such as this.
How dare you! That's disgusting! That's disgusting! That is not fair, ma'am. I'm sorry. That is not fair.
Thank you, good evening. My name is Arnold Rosenberg, and I reside at 14003 Mosaic Nook in the Mosaic at West Creek subdivision. I'm the president of the Mosaic at West Creek HOA Board of Directors. Mosaic is a 500-home established 55-plus senior residential community, legally protected under federal and state law, directly adjacent to, and in some cases surrounded by this proposed project. Because our residents are the most immediately and significantly affected, I'm here to state clearly what we believe must be provided before Goochland County can legally advance this development. Under Virginia law, the county cannot approve a conditional use permit unless it determines that adverse impacts on neighboring properties will be prevented or mitigated. This is a mandatory finding, not discretionary. Right now, Tract has not provided the information required by our community or for the county to make this determination. First, Tract has not demonstrated land use compatibility. There is not a single example anywhere in the United States of a 900 megawatt hyperscale data center campus built directly adjacent to a 55 plus senior community. While Tract has claimed compatibility, this is an untested adjacency pattern. Modeling is not evidence. Assumptions are not commitments. Compatibility must be proven, not declared. This untested adjacency pattern creates unknown risks for the county and for my homeowners. You You mentioned the meeting the TOD requirements. The TOD requirements are an overlay on existing zoning. They are basic or baseline mitigations. They do not in themselves make compatibility.
Thank you.
Second, Tract admits that future operators, not Tract, will choose the cooling systems, generating equipment, noise mitigation, light pollution, water usage, wastewater discharge, and so forth. These operator-controlled decisions determine every major impact on our residents. But I'm representing 500 homes here. These operator-controlled decisions determine every major impact on our residents. Tract's lack of control means Tract cannot offer enforceable commitments and thus cannot guarantee compatibility, and the county cannot make its required legal findings without operator-specific information. Third, construction impacts over a 6 to 7 year period have not been analyzed. A construction period of this length is a project of its own. Multi-year construction of this scale adjacent to a senior community requires a dedicated impact analysis under Virginia law. There is no analysis of construction noise, dust, blasting requirements, vibration impacts, traffic volumes, or hours of operation. These impacts are guaranteed to occur, and they directly affect a senior community. Fourth, Tract has provided no public health impact analysis for a legally protected 55+ community. There is no PM 2.5 or NOx exposure modeling, no senior-specific health risk assessment, no cumulative impact analyses, no diesel exhaust modeling, no vibration or dust-related health analyses, and no commitment to real-time public health monitoring. For a senior community, public health is not secondary. It is the single most important compatibility factor and is a recognized category in environmental review. Fifth, Tract confirms diesel generators will be used, but provides no information on generator count, emissions, dispersion modeling, cumulative impacts, emergency operation emissions, or alternatives to diesel. Generator emissions are the single largest air quality impact driver for hyperscale campuses and must be modeled before any compatibility finding can be made. Without this information, our community and the county cannot determine whether adverse impacts can be prevented. Before any permit application can be accepted, Mosaic requires Tract to provide the information the county must have to conduct its statutory compatibility review, including operator-specific data, verified modeling, construction impact analyses, senior-specific disclosure of all environmental and infrastructure impacts consistent with Virginia law, and make this information available to the public. Earlier this week, Mosaic transmitted to Tract a detailed list of 83 written questions covering these issues, and there will be more coming. We require written responses to all 83 questions because they contain the information Goochland County must have under Virginia law. Until those responses are provided, verified, and validated, Mosaic will actively oppose advancing this project from the pre-application to the formal conditional use permit submission.
are you? Thank you for being with us tonight. I don't think any of us envy you having to be up on that stage, if I'm being honest about it. Pretty good turnout though, right? Would you agree? Pretty good turnout? Seeing a lot of red. You know, at the beginning of this, you promised us honesty and transparency. Do you remember that? I'm holding in my hand here a card that I'm sure everybody got, inviting us to this meeting. Honesty and transparency. You know what it says it's about tonight? A campus. Nowhere in here does it say data center. Not once. It doesn't say data center, and yet you want us to come here and be prepared to talk in an intelligent fashion about what's happening. Why couldn't the words data center be on this card? And yet, look at the crowd who's here. How many other people would be here in addition if they actually knew that tonight was about a data center coming into their backyard? And I will tell you something. As somebody who spent his entire career in public relations, that was intentional. And you can't deny it. We all know that. It was left off on purpose because, you know what? You don't want like 5 times more people here tonight. That's the reason you don't want it to happen. Nobody's confused about why data center wasn't on this invitation, okay? And just for perspective, you said there would be about 3 million square feet of building space. Just for perspective, Short Pump Town Center has 1.25 million square feet. So you're talking about more than 2 times the size of Short Pump Town Center coming into our backyard as a data center. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants it. Okay? Thank you for listening.
Before I begin my comments, respectfully, it was brought to my attention the county's standard operating procedures for community meetings specify that the applicant shall engage with attendees regarding the project and clearly explain, not take 10 questions and then you can't remember. You should be answering every question as it's fielded to you. It should be this. You're writing it down. It's not good. But be that as it may, we'll roll with it. I have several questions. One, how many generators are you going to have when it's fully built out? My calculation says 307. Understanding that you'll use Tier 4 certified generators, would you discuss environmental impacts of this many generators running simultaneously during a blackout or brownout? During the SCC hearing regarding a substation for Eli Lilly, Dominion disclosed it had received 3 engineering letters of authorization for 3 data center complexes in the TOD. We know that one of them is a Tuckahoe Technology Park. Is Tract involved in the other 2? No? Getting back to the noise analysis, it conflicts with the Tier 4. Your noise analysis set is modeled on a 3.5 megawatt generator. Having been in the electrical business selling these things for 35 years, the largest Tier 4 is 3.25 megawatts. Consequently, any assumptions and conclusions that you've drawn in your modeling in that noise analysis can't be believed. It's smoke and mirrors. It's smoke and mirrors.
Thank you to all of you for what you've done tonight. I live 750 feet. I live on Cerulli, so I'm going to be 750 feet from one of your buildings. And I think what you're hearing tonight is meeting the minimum requirements of the TOD is not enough. If you're going to build data centers adjacent to a retirement community or adjacent to any residential community, do more. Go the extra mile. Prove that data centers and residential communities can coexist. And the way you do that is to reduce the sound, to reduce the dBAs, to reduce the dBCs, to minimize the amount of time that those generators run during the day so that they're not 8 to 5 and 11 to 2 or something more meaningful, but go the extra mile. That's what I'm asking. The other question I have is, what is an emergency? Like if you get this thing built and they can't turn on the power, isn't that an emergency? So you can run off of generators? I'd really like to understand that, but thank you.
Thank you. James Luckett from the Reader's Branch. You mentioned the TOD several times in your development of your plans. I'm sure you're aware of, concerned citizens have brought a lawsuit against the county. And you may hear from them very soon. What would your response be if the TOD that you're basing your plans on is found to be null and void?
Good evening. I want to know if Tract has developed any 12-building super center and it's currently operational, and where is it? Number two, has Tract developed the land and found out that they didn't end up having a data center and it was left undeveloped in terms of a data center? So you had done all the damage to the vegetation and everything like that, and it's left.
So, as a gentleman before me stated, the Department of Planning and Zoning standard operating procedure for community meetings stated several things. One of them was that Tract was supposed to hold this meeting as close to possible to the land in question. That's in the east end of the county. You made all of us come over here to the west end for your very slick presentation. That's number one. Number two, Tract did not put those postcards in the mail in the 2 to 3 week time frame they should have put it in. And number three, you are not following the rules in the standards set by Goochland County. Now, let me go to my questions. In the pre-act app, Tract stated the only reason they came to Goochland County was the TOD. You've mentioned it yourself. I can quote that passage if you want, but since you're not responding to questions, I won't bother. So we can 100% say that by passing the TOD, Goochland County invited Tract to come. Are you aware there's an active lawsuit against Goochland County and the TOD? Why is Tract asking for a CUP permit in the midst of a lawsuit to declare the TOD invalid? When the TOD is declared invalid by the circuit court, what does Tract plan to do? Tract has been involved in Goochland County since at least 2023, according to non-disclosures agreements released on the county website by Dr. Riley. You were not telling the truth about that. The next question I won't even bother to ask because you're not going to answer it. I'm very curious, though, as to who reached out to whom. Did the landowners of the TOD West reach out to Tract, or did Tract reach out to the landowners? It makes a big difference. How can Tract ask for any particulars in this CUP request if you're not building the data centers? You have no idea what's going to come. You're asking the county to approve a conditional use permit based on nothing. We don't know what it's going to be. Do you have a data center developer that's interested in this land? Have you already teamed with Google, Meta, Amazon, whoever? Is Tract aware that residents do not want data centers in Goochland, but especially next to a 500-home community? Let me tell you something else. I was born in Virginia. I was raised in Virginia. I went to kindergarten here. I went to elementary school here, high school, and college. I got married in this state. So your comment that you went to college here doesn't make you nearly as much of a Virginian as I am. here, in case you haven't figured it out from all these people, we do not want data centers in Goochland.
Very simply tonight, I'm Reverend Lisa Sykes, I live in Reader's Branch. I'm concerned that we're supposed to prove the data centers are dangerous instead of the county charge proving to us they're safe. We know in Loudoun County, the number one reason children are missing days at school is asthma, which is a respiratory issue. I've been told by a data center expert that it's a no-brainer that Tract should offer to put monitoring equipment around the perimeter of the data center boundary for nitrous oxides, for PM 2.5, any other pollutants that are there. And to not do that is an act of bad faith and a failure to look after the health and well-being of residents. Here you've got a vulnerable population up and down the eastern edge of the county because the county put us there. We are a retirement community up and down. You need to take extra special care and prove to us there's no harm, and that's going to be a hard sell.
This will be number 10. So I will go through the questions asked after we hear from this gentleman.
Thank you for hosting this meeting. My name is Hardin Crowder. I'm the pastor of Denver Baptist Church, which is a historical church founded in 1773 that will be very close to some of these property lines and generators. I am going to cut out questions that you've already addressed, and I thank you for addressing those. The materials described for a project covering nearly 872 acres divided into 7 developmental areas with as much as 900 megawatts of gross electrical demand and multiple substations, and 5 to 7 years of construction is a great project, but the concept plan describes the locations of development areas and entrances and substations as approximate. I've been unable to find information that identifies the eventual operator of the cooling system, which you have addressed that will be coming. I hope that does come soon. As far as I can determine, the Dominion load study has not been made public, and I hope that that will be made public once it is known. Once this information is available, I think the community should have access to it so that we can see it for ourselves. Noise is a particular concern for me. The Tract consultant project that I read had a noise level of 54 dBA at 2 receptors, which, if I'm not mistaken, is only 1 decibel below the county limit. The generator testing model I found reaches up to 65 dBc at 1 receptor, and while assuming that only 12 generators can operate across the campus, the report also acknowledged that the results could change if a different set of equipment is ultimately used. I'm concerned about the 1 decibel model margin. I think that's just simply too narrow, especially when we don't have a strong command about who's going to be operating this or who's going to be running this in a few years. A July 2026 paper in Loudoun County's official archive written by the board vice chair, Mike Turner, describes a data center microgrid where 8 natural gas turbines operate around the clock, and he reports approximately 52 decibels of continual noise at neighboring property lines, along with some serious complaints about noise pollution lasting more than a year. In Prince William County's Great Oak community, official minutes recorded noise decibels of 70 dBc at 4 o'clock in the morning on 2 consecutive Monday nights. Those minutes are noted that the county staff have received no response from the operator of the facility. I don't want to see that same thing happen here. I know you have a limited control when it gets to that point, but that's a real concern for me as someone who holds worship here. Virginia's independent JLARC study identified at least 15 operating sites where residents considered the noise a serious problem. Residents reported disrupted sleep, migraines, difficulty concentrating, and inability to enjoy their own yards. I know your data says something contrary. I'm worried that the science has not been around long enough to determine a reliable truth on that. JLARC also found that at one data center, heavy traffic damaged neighborhood roads, sometimes obstructed school buses and emergency vehicles. These harms are documented. They're exceedingly difficult to correct once a project has been approved. Traffic is a serious concern. I know the local study anticipates 600 to 800 construction workers. I'm not sure if that also includes the trucks, the hauling traffic, oversized equipment, and those things. If it is, then neglect that part of the question, but I did not see that. I want to make sure that was included in that. And lastly, what I really would like to speak to is the projected tax revenue benefit. I can see why you would think it would be a big benefit, but I'm a little skeptical of it because I believe the Ernst & Young's model was prepared for Tract using information that you supplied as the client. And so I don't say that as a gotcha, but I would seriously like to see an independent third party provide information on this. I know we have a lot of questions to answer, so I'll cede the rest of my time. Thank you.
All right, so as promised, that was 10. So I have been taking notes and will respond to these questions at the time. This is me responding to the questions that have been asked. So the claims that I'm not responding, this is the response time. So the first question was around pollution and damage to a variety of things, bees, insects, children, animals, the brain and tissue damage. And I will say candidly, I do not have research, but I am happy and my team can go back and look into those claims and come back to you with some more information. So I can't answer that today, but I'm more than happy to look into it and see what information we can find for you. Okay, so Mr. Rosenberg from Mosaic had several questions. I will try to work my way through them. I believe, okay, so he talked about unknown risks, the modeling is an evidence, that the CUP has not been proven to not prove adverse impacts. So at this point, we're in the pre-application phase. So what those adverse impacts, mitigation and prevention, those are coming. They're coming in the next phase. When we get a CUP application, the mitigations get written into conditions, hence conditional use permit. So that's when they would get documented. So I think as Carrie said in the beginning, no decisions are being made here tonight. This was our pre-application presentation. We are taking all this feedback. We are working with the county to continue to develop the project, the information, the mitigations that need to be codified, and we'll begin to work through those. So our hope is by the time we get to the Board of Supervisors, they can make the finding that you described under Virginia law. You had talked also about operator-controlled decisions. So same thing I mentioned before, these conditions are what run with the land. So that's how Tract can make sure that operators do what we're talking about. So when I stand up here and say air-cooled, it's written in condition that runs with the land. Anyone who comes to develop on the land has to follow that condition. So a lot of those things that perhaps are unknown, the exact equipment that will be bought, even if we were building the facilities, we wouldn't know the exact equipment at this stage, the pre-application stage. But you have the guarantees around sound, around buffers, around these different components. So again, we're regulating, it may not be this is the chiller that will be purchased, this brand, this model, whatever, but it will be this chiller has to do A, B, C, and D and can't do X, Y, and Z. So that's what the conditions speak to and how we set those up and again, live those on with the land. Construction impacts. So what has been addressed to date is the TIA does include construction traffic in the modeling. The other things you've talked about around noise, hours, things like that, would all be made in these development conditions that come with the CUP. And so we are more than willing, the county has a standard condition around a construction management plan where we can put conditions that these things are addressed at the time at which they occur. So the construction management plan would be submitted in the future, but it must address these things. These are construction hours. These are construction noise limits, those sort of things. And we can write in the times. So we can get really specific in the conditions to make sure the things that aren't done at this phase or the CUP phase, but are happen at a later phase, are done the way we all agree that they should be done. No public health impacts. Public health is a broad term, so I'd be happy to have a conversation around exactly what public health concerns there are. I did talk about air emissions. I've talked about air quality and some other things. So happy if there are specific items around public health that, much like the brain impacts, we could do additional research and come back with information. The generators, again, the number, the type of generators will be governed by the end operator. But we've talked about the end operator gets decisions made for them by the CUP. So things like the noise level. It doesn't matter how many generators there are. If there's a noise level, they can't be louder than that. So again, the exact number, type, those sort of things can be regulated in other ways where we're looking to the thing we're trying to fix. So I think we could all agree, none of us, I take that back. The majority of us probably do not know the difference between two different generators. There might be experts in the room. I don't want to say all of us. Most of us would not know the difference between two different models of generator, but we know we don't want it to be louder than a certain amount. So that's what our conditions go to. So they go a step beyond the thing and like, what are we trying to solve? I'm concerned about noise, I'm concerned about pollution, I'm concerned about vibration, whatever it might be. So the CUP can address those things, the things we're concerned about, and those regulations then inform the decisions as to whether you do generator A or B. All right, the notice. Where's the gentleman that I approved the copy on the notice? It was not intentional. It was an oversight. The postcard went out to those of you that extended beyond the boundary of what we're required to notice under the county policy. Those of you within the boundary of who we were required to notice received a letter. The postcard was an additional mailing done, again, I admit it, in haste, and I will take full responsibility for it not saying data center. And you have my word, sir, my honest, transparent, respectful word, that it was an accidental oversight.
No, it wasn't. It was an accident.
No, it was a data center they were talking about.
So the next question dealt also with generators and a question of the sound model when they're running simultaneously. That's something that we're going to take back and do as part of our formal application. We just had not done that modeling for the pre-application, but that's information we're more than happy to provide. The Dominion study for 3 data centers, no, we are not involved in anything but Tuckahoe Tech Park.
Right
And I will also follow up on the question, unless somebody knows about the tier 4 generators in 3.5 versus 3.25 megawatts. I'm looking at my team. We'll follow up on that one as well to make sure that we have an answer for you. I will say to the gentleman who said that TOD is a minimum, do more, go the extra mile. That's the feedback we wanted tonight. So we're hearing you, we're listening. This is all information. We need to know what you care about and what matters. Because going above and beyond on everything may not matter. But the things like the buffers, we're hearing the noise, we're hearing these things. And we will take that back and see what we can do in a formal application as we move forward. In terms of what is definition of emergency, there's not an industry definition of an emergency. The term I use and the one that we'll probably write into conditions are things that are beyond the control of the operator and landowner. So we're told to or have to under a permit do something. So we can't declare an emergency.
What about backup generators? To that on emergency backup generators?
About backup generators, they would be used during those same emergency circumstances, things beyond our control. So we have to test them, or we're directed, or the power goes out. So again, those emergency situations beyond our control. From Reader's Branch, there's a question about the litigation. We are very aware of the ongoing litigation between the citizens and the county. We are continuing to monitor it. We will wait for the outcome of that through the courts before we figure out what action we would take. There is nothing that's legally precluding us from pursuing this application at this time. Somebody asked about whether we have any 12 building campuses in operation. No. We have 2 campuses that are currently under construction, 3 campuses that are currently under construction, 2.
Stop calling them campuses. Call them what they are.
They're data center campuses. We have 2 data center campuses under construction. One is outside of Reno, and we have partnered with our sister company, Fleet, to begin vertical construction out there. They did groundbreaking a couple weeks ago, and we have a tenant that is ready to go in there. Am I loud? NVIDIA. NVIDIA will be coming into our Reno data center campus. The other campus that is under construction is actually in Hanover County. We've been working through the extensive environmental permitting that's required about that site and have been putting roads and other things in. Those 2 are not. Okay, there was some question about the meeting location, and I want to touch on a couple of things. I am responding to questions, so the rule that we're engaging. I'm sorry, what was your second question?
My second question was, have you ever developed the land and then not have data centers come in?
Oh, sorry. Sorry. No. There is so much demand for these sites that we have never encountered that problem. We often have people come into us saying, can you build them faster? Because there is such a demand out there from these end users to come in. So we have never had a situation where we've cleared a site and not had someone come in. So I am responding to questions, and clearly if I missed one, I am taking the feedback and trying to answer all the questions. The meeting location, this is where the county asked us to hold it. To our knowledge, this is the largest facility in the county to hold a meeting. So that's why we were asked to be here. Again, the letters are the ones that were mailed within the required notice period. The postcards went in the mail the day after the letters. So everything around notice of this meeting was done according to the rules. Again, I already addressed the lawsuit. Let me talk about the NDAs. So, yes, we had an NDA in place with the county in 2023. It had nothing to do with the site.
What is the NDA about?
The NDA was about another potential site in the county that ended up not going through. So, we have terminated all of the existing NDAs. There are none in place. Why was there an NDA? It was industry practice a few years ago that a lot of developers, and it's not uncommon in development in general, And a lot of it has to do with, I'll be candid, competition. That we want to be able to come in and talk to the county without competition finding out that we're doing it. So the county enters into these NDAs with these private parties. And so we as Tract no longer work with NDAs.
Where was that?
It was not here. We did not pursue an application. We never got the site under contract.
Hi, everyone. I appreciate all of your concerns. My name's Jacob Bach. I'm the SVP of Land Strategy at Tract. I'm the one who actually went with the county to get those NDAs signed and everything. The practice was when we were going out to look throughout Virginia at different sites, we would get the counties under contract because we wanted to make sure that other developers didn't find out what counties, what potential parcels we were even talking to them about. When I had that NDA executed with the Goochland County EDC, we did not have a specific site that we were giving an offer to or anything. We wanted to learn more about the county's receptivity to data center development, what they were thinking long-term in the county, things like what wet utility infrastructure was there, what conversations they were having with Dominion looked like, because we really wanted to understand what the county was going to look like in 2, 3, 4 years and how we could have a development work with the county. Yes, we identified multiple sites that we thought may work. None of those came to fruition and we never had any real discussions with any other landowners other than these. We can't speak about any projects that we did not get under contract. We can if we have non-disclosure agreements with people, with the county. We have. You are. We are not, we cannot talk. We had multiple sites across the county that we had identified as possibilities ranging from the far east side of the county all the way to the far west side of the county. Yes, we had multiple sites identified. That is why we wanted to talk to the county to understand where the wet utility infrastructure was, what would be possible to build on, and that is why we had the NDAs. That is no longer a practice that we use, and that's why we voided all the NDAs.
We are not looking at any sites on the west part of the county. This is the only site that Tract is pursuing at this time. There are no sites. There was a period of time several years ago that there were landowners in the western end of the county that might have been interested in putting their land together for an assemblage. That deal never happened. So the discussion of these prior deals is not material to what's before you. The NDAs have been terminated. This is the only site that Tract is looking at in Goochland County. So there was a question about whether the landowner reached out to us or we reached out to the landowner. I'm not sure it matters. I believe in this case, the landowner reached out to us as they were interested in what the county was doing around the TOD. Then the final question from this individual was around the end user, and I think I've talked about how the conditions are what binds the end user. So even though we don't know who it will be, we know what they have to do. And that's what the conditions are for, and that's what will come as we continue through the process of the CUP. Reverend Sykes, you asked some questions about asthma. So I think regardless of whether you're next to a data center, asthma rates in this country have gone up. As far as the specific research you mentioned, I'm not familiar with it. I'm happy to look into it and see what might be there around the correlation in Loudoun County. But again, I think that's just information I don't know. In terms of the ongoing monitoring, that's something we can look at. Let us go back and see what is possible out there, and see if there is an option for that. So the Reverend from the Dover Baptist Church, couple questions. The concept plan uses the word approximate a lot. I think we can work as we go through the process to eliminate that where possible. And, you know, again, I'm still going to say the approximate building square footage because I don't have the exact thing. But in terms of the development areas, we can do things to lock those down and make them less approximate. Again, I've talked about sort of the operator. We do not have an operator in line, in discussions, anything for this site. We do not have one. So, again, I think I talked a little about that buy box. Remember when I talked about that about 18 months before power comes? That's when we'll start engaging in those discussions. So there is no one here ready to take the site today. I'm not standing, no one's hiding behind me. We do not have a user identified. Will the Dominion load study be made public? Is that a duck? Typically it isn't, but we're happy to work with you if there are specific questions you have around that. Again, nothing to necessarily hide there, just procedurally. Dominion does not make those public. The noise and the noise modeling being very close or at the limits of the TOD. That was why we modeled it. So that is how we model, can we get to that number? And what mitigations are in place? So there's things like the generator yard barrier. That's part of that modeling. But as I said before, the number really is driven by, the mitigation is really driven by what the number is. So if that number at the property line, this is our perimeter property line, if that number is set, whatever happens inside has to be there. If it's over here, if this exceeds the limit, it's in violation. And so you have to go back into the site and do something to mitigate it in order to reach that. So the modeling was intended to show that we could meet the maximum that's in there, the minimum that's in, no, maximum, I'm sorry. The maximum that's in the TOD. So the modeling intentionally went right up to that line. But again, when that number changes, whatever has to be done has to be done. You mentioned gas turbines. There's no on-site power generation proposed for this site. I think that was very clear in the TOD. We are not proposing any on-site power generation for this project. It is not permitted under the TOD. You had asked about truck traffic. So the TIA does include those numbers. We don't have a specific breakdown as to how many would be large trucks versus, passenger vehicles. We don't have that breakdown, but the construction numbers that are modeled in the TIA do include all those things. Same thing, the operational number include delivery trucks and those sort of things. Yes, EY was our consultant who prepared the tax revenue. In many locations, we've worked with the county's Commissioner of Revenue, Treasurer, other departments. The county has engaged a third party, and we're happy to have those conversations if that's something that the county would like to validate, which is part of the reason we provided the analysis to begin with, so the county could look at it and make their own decisions. Did I do okay? Did I get everyone's questions? All right. It's 8:08. Round 2. You want to start us off, ma'am?
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I'm Terry Becker Fritz, and I live at 7114 Montage Row in Mosaic Creek. I want to go back to the mitigations that you talk about regarding noise, and you talk about the proposed, how you're going to meet what you're saying. I want to know if you have based what you're planning to use on actual studies that have been done to assure they work, and whether they have worked with this size of mega center when it's fully operational and going. And the second part of that question is you talk about doing the noise studies at the property line, which is the data center property line. I want to know what you have done at the homeowner property line that is adjacent to the data center to find out whether it is actually working at that place. All right? Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Rob Williamson, 32 years citizen of Goochland County in District 4. I just want to point out a couple of things. One is you're confusing the issue between the designated growth area and this particular 870 acres. It was envisioned not as part of a plan like your plan. The plan you were talking about was West Creek. This is not part of West Creek. West Creek was envisioned as an office park, not an industrial center. So that's one of them. It was envisioned by the top plan to be residential and office, not commercial. Heavy industrial is north of I-64. So with that in mind, the late entry of the TOD West into the TOD is suspect. The second point, everyone has been talking about the emergency diesel generators. And when there's an emergency, all of them are going to be running. How many? An informed community needs to know how many on total. If it's 300, that was suggested, what is the level of testing? There's 30 days in a month. If you have to test them monthly, and it's 300, then that's 10 a day. What's the noise level for that? Consistent every day. And more importantly, the public health issue with the emissions. I appreciate your 4S soundbite, but smell, most of the toxins that are in diesel emissions, you can't smell them. They don't have a smell. So what are you going to smell? You know what the modeling says. You said you had modeling. You know they're tier 4 diesels. What's the parts per million of all the toxic chemicals in the emissions? And how much is expected daily, not just in a 24-hour period when they're all running simultaneously? And the other impact is you had up there, I forget the total number of gallons of water. You say you're going to be hooked up to the public water system, but you said public water and on-site storage. Where's the on-site storage come from? Is it rainwater? You're not drilling wells. Obviously, you're taking it from public water, and you're having a surge on it. If you look at the utility master plan report in 2025, our public water system has many deficiencies. As part of pressure regulation and above-ground storage tank needs, especially Hockett Road, there's a proposal for above-ground storage tank. Is your network of water going to be integrated in with the county and satisfy some of those needs for our public water? You know, as far as an above-ground tank, you'll be able to use your site for a location for a pumping station, a pressure regulation station, or an above-ground storage tank. That's what the community would like to know. So thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Walter Cooper, and I live in Mosaic. Thank you for your time and your presentation, and I hope Tract pays you well for these types of presentations. Like I said, I live in Mosaic. Specifically, my property backs up to the proposed property line between Mosaic and the proposed data center. Therefore, our great room, living room, kitchen looks out onto that property line. Our master bedroom looks out onto that property line. You mentioned it in passing in your presentation, but can you talk about any ambient light leaking overnight while we're trying to sleep during normal sleeping hours? If you could address that, I would appreciate it. Also, I had a quick comment. I feel bad for the property owner.
If, back when this site was designated, I think someone said back in the 1980s, given the neighborhood, they could have developed it however they wanted to. They could have sold it to whoever they wanted to. 6, 8, 10 years ago, given the neighborhood, they could have probably developed it pretty much however they wanted to. They could have sold it to pretty much, well, they could sell it anyway, but anyone who bought it could have developed it however they wanted to. Now, this neighborhood has a 500-unit, 55-plus community. It's got an apartment complex, it's got a child care center, and it's got everything else that's been developed in this neighborhood over the past half dozen years. And I would propose to you, I would propose to the county that the data center really does not fit the neighborhood as it currently is, and that I would suggest that it be relocated someplace else. Thank you very much.
My name is Margaret Levitt. My name is Margaret Levitt. Before I get started, I just want to say that I heard you say you were listening, and I think the feedback that you've gotten from those attending is that we don't want you to take down notes about 10 questions. We would prefer that you answer questions in the order that you receive them. Plus, you're struggling and you're asking, did I get all the questions? And people are saying, no, you didn't get this. Why not just, I'll wait patiently and respectfully. Why don't you go ahead and answer the questions that you already have? And then we'll proceed one by one. Listen to the feedback you're getting right now.
So I think as Carrie mentioned, our goal tonight is to hear from as many people as possible. We have found, in our experience, I've been doing land use development for 25 years. This is the fastest and most efficient way to hear from everyone. Doing the back and forth will prevent folks in this room from being heard. So my goal is to hear from you. So you're welcome to continue with your question, or if you want to wait to be the 10th question, I can answer right after, whichever you would prefer.
That's all we need to know about the fact that you are listening. In terms of standards, already we know that with this meeting, standards have been violated. And I don't see that the county pointed this out so that you could have adjusted and met the criteria. That's concerning. I heard a lot about dark sky lighting. So I also live in a 55 and older community in District 4. And I see just in this residential community, the developer was not held to the standards of the proffers. With your company and a data center, the fact that, something's pointed out, you say, well, we'll fix it, we'll comply. Really what we know, because you're here with an educated group of people, we understand that data centers will just pay the fine. And in terms of the county and what's gone on in our community with development, and where the developer did not meet the standards, their excuse is we only have one inspector in the county. Right. We can't possibly. They didn't even understand what dark sky lighting was. So, wish us luck with this. And you're gonna play that, and the data, whoever occupies this, they're gonna play it to their advantage. We already understand what this industry does to communities, and they're gonna roll right over us, and it seems like they're gonna have our hands left.
Hi, my name is Judy Thompson. I don't live in the east end of the county any longer. I moved to the western end of the county because the east end had way too much construction and light and pollution, and it was not the place that I wanted to live. So my heart really goes out to these people who are moving there, who live there, who stayed there when I moved 18 years ago. And I hear that you're willing to make special concessions for people who live in the Mosaic community, which is fabulous. I believe you should. What about all those other people who live not in the Mosaic community that are still in close proximity to your data center areas? They deserve the same respect, the same protections, and the same peace that you afford to any other resident that might be impacted. Secondly, yes, our county has used our central high school here in the center of the county for large meetings and presentations as long as I've lived in the county, which is now 29 years and counting. Not this building, we used to use the other buildings, but this is the newest one. But last year I attended a community meeting put on by VDOT at the Salem Baptist Church, much closer to the location of this campus build. Also on the other side, and I don't know if this church hosts community meetings, but there's Hope Church. Right. It's a huge facility. There are places in the county that can accommodate large crowds. This is not the only one. And to say this is the only one really is doing a disservice. As far as your wildlife studies, I became curious with the Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission meetings, what was published concerning wildlife and noise. Over the 2,000 studies that I reviewed, I found 0 that did not have a negative effect. It affected everything from dragonflies, which have no formal auditory system, as we know, ears. It affected trees, woody shrubs, birds, amphibians, fish, reptiles, every pollinator. Birds leave the area. Birds spread seeds. A single blue jay or cardinal can plant up to 3,000 acorns a year. That's a huge economic boom for our agricultural land, and you're coming to take agricultural land. I don't think that's a transparent use of a zoning designation, a technology overlay. Nobody expected an agricultural zone to become an industrial zone. So maybe look at those changes.
Good evening. Good evening. Ann Bridges. I live in the eastern end of the county, and I'm a 3rd generation resident of Goochland, and my 4th generation lives with me now. Moved back after getting an engineering degree, so I'm a mechanical engineer. Not practicing now, but I did work in the industry in MEP. To piggyback on what she just said, I don't remember her name. I just found a honeybee study with the effects of PM 2.5. I'm happy to send that to you. And to the county, it does impact pollen, which then impacts the bees. And we are an agricultural county, and that is part of our comprehensive plan to protect the agricultural nature of our county. So that leads me to emissions. I appreciate that you've provided information that perhaps the decibel level is slightly below what TOD is stating. The trick I have is trying to digest that when I'm not sure if that's a cumulative sound of the entire generator bank testing. And to further that one, testing at low load would be like a car riding on idle versus a race car on a Formula 500 track when all of them are running on a peak day when there's an emergency. And I'm not a generator expert, but I have worked around them and we did design fit outs for them. That's electrical, I'm mechanical. But in general, if you look at the DEQ and EPA, Tier 2 versus Tier 4, yes, a Tier 4 is generally better on emissions. However, they are allowed to run at a much longer many more hours. I don't have the exact number in my head because we are just getting this information tonight. Since there were NDAs, we've been involved for a year, but there's a lot of information, so I've made a lot of notes. But the caveat is it depends, because a tier 4 can run much longer and be used as supplemental power, not just emergency backup. So God is in the details, not the devil. Okay, so just dig a little deeper on the generator piece. And the cumulative effect, if you're under emergency power and you are running generators, what else is going to be happening? It's probably going to be a peak day, like 105 degrees. And the air conditioners are going to be running at full speed. So you're going to have the sound levels of not only the generator banks, but full speed, air-cooled chillers. So we're not talking about 55 decibels, we're talking about 65 decibels. I'd like you to look for that study, that's my question, find that information. So that's noise, and that follows noise and emissions, I guess. I'll combine two categories, I had two slides. Give me 1 second, please. Also for emissions, you shared that at this point, you're not looking at supplemental power or an alternate to grid power. You're not looking at generating power on site. However, I'd like to know Plan B, because as a planner and a consultant, I'm sure you have Plan B and C, et cetera, and so forth. And your tenant certainly would expect you to have a backup plan. So if Dominion is unable to provide that power at the point when you need it, you're going to need to supply and fulfill your contracts to your tenants. We know there's a natural gas compression plant within a short distance of this property with major gas lines running through the property. Of course, that's a gold mine to anyone. However, would Goochland become the test site, a human test site, for not only the emissions of the generators and the PM 2.5s from that, but then also an additive gas plant generation of PM 2.5, because that is a known entity. And I think you're way too close to any residential to be able to do that test. So public health issue, that's number one for me. Just make sure I covered everything. And I do want to acknowledge that you have thrown out a perk, if you will, by offering the 1,000-foot setback, because that is above the industry standard. That is kind of the gold standard, but as someone else pointed out, it's kind of tricky to only offer it to Mosaic, who would deserve it, but so would every residential area. Because of the NDAs, in effect, that have been lifted, as you said, I believe it's built a complete and warranted lack of trust with the community. So your job is very hard, and I applaud your effort tonight, but there are a whole lot of questions to answer, and I appreciate you answering them. Thank you so much.
Gary, I have a question, hypothetical. If you didn't work for Tract and you lived in our neighborhood, would you be sitting out here raging against this, or would you, and how much of your spiel would you believe? How much would, if you're an actual property owner, how much of your spiel would you actually believe that you were us? That's it. And I expect an answer.
My question is, how many other sites and counties has Tract proposed, not to this particular scale, because this is, as you said, almost unprecedented, but at any real scale, has Tract proposed a data center campus and been denied? And what were the reasons for Tract being denied to move forward with those proposals or entertain proposals? we would like to know how many sites. and counties that are in.
Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Lee Swartz. I'm an actively practicing triple board certified physician specializing in taking care of cancer patients. Today I will speak to what I know and advocate for my community. Like many people represented here, I live very close to the proposed park, but in far western Henrico County. We in Henrico did not get any notice of your meeting, and I thank our Goochland neighbors for informing us. Like many people here, I am concerned about the impact on our environment, including our wetlands and waterways nearby, but I am most concerned about how you will damage the health of my friends and neighbors. We know that your park will pollute our air, water, and land, and destroy the serenity that makes our community beautiful. You will siphon our resources, including our municipal drinking water, and further stress a water grid that buckled in 2025. You will further contribute to the degradation of our delicate climate by outrageous usage of fossil fuels. Just like big tobacco, you use deceitful and deceptive practices anchored on lies with no regard for the health of the communities that you trample. We see you, big tech, and recognize the same strategy. You are equally toxic. Shame on you. It takes time to develop a cancer when it's due to an environmental cause or toxin. Your data center is on a massive scale and you don't have safety data. Tract, you are a cancer, and we will use all of our resources to eradicate you from our community. We don't need you here. We don't want you here. I am buoyed by the engagement and outreach of our community. Thank you to everyone for being here to fight together.
My name is Marilyn Moore, and I live in Mosaic, 9730 Kaleidoscope Road. I'm here because I have somewhat of an answer. I know there was the bee question that came up, but I also had heard that in the Midwest, it's a farming community, and there's a data center out that way. And one of the farmers, ever since the data center has come into that area, all of his cows, the calves were stillborn. So now we're talking about, well, we're talking about meat, we're talking about milk, and survival. That's just one incident, but I bet that it can be accumulated much more. The other thing that is very concerning to me is, as you can see, I carry this thing around, and this thing is to help me breathe. And we all know that what you're proposing with all of those generators are going to spew out tons and tons of particulates that could go into my lungs and damage my lungs even further. The other issue that scares me to death almost, and it's not a funny matter, do not smile, is that I might have to have a lung transplant. If I live near a data center that is spewing out poison, noxious toxins, particulates into the air, they might not approve me because of where I live. I moved into a 55 and older community for peace of mind, to be able to fill out the rest of the years that I might have left. And you and your company and all the other people who Google and everyone else could cut my life short. And that's not right. And you don't care. You know why? Because you don't care because of your money that you're making. And that's the truth. You know it, you know it, you know it, and all the people over there know it as well. The other thing is, another incident that I had heard is there was outrage in another community over having a data center, and the participants just like this, you can see all of these people who are against you coming into our backyard. Excuse me. At the end of the meeting, the applicant stood up and said, I withdraw my application, because he believed and cared about the people in the audience. And I would like you to do the same thing, because I want to live out my life to the best of my ability without having hums and particulates and noxious toxins spewed out into the air. I don't really believe half of what you put up here. You say transparency, but I'm really not sure. I really do appreciate you letting me say all of these things, but I would really appreciate even more if at the end of tonight, you go ahead and say you're going to withdraw your application.
All right, that was 10. So I'm going to go ahead and respond. If folks are standing and don't want to stand, you're welcome to take seats in the first row, and you'll maintain your spot in line. Okay, so the first comment that we had was around sound mitigation. And have actual studies been done? And the answer is yes, they have. The mitigation measures that are put in place, the walls, the various other things, have been proven. They are designed to have a certain level of mitigation. So when I say the sound study modeled walls around the generator yard, those walls have been modeled and designed to a standard that we can quantify through our modeling. So yes, they have been. Is it measured? So they've been, again, the mitigation is done about the machine that's right in front of the wall. So the wall is modeled to provide an effectiveness to a machine at a distance. So when it is applied at scale, that is what it is designed and proven to do. So yes. And then you had also asked if the sound is measured at the homeowner property line or the data center property line. So when I talk about property line, I talk about the perimeter of our site. So to the extent that touches a homeowner property line, it's the same line. So if someone directly abuts, there was one gentleman who directly abuts the same property line, that's the same point. So it's not measured interior, I'm talking about the big outside outline. So those would be the property lines that's measured towards. There was some question about the designated growth area and that West Creek was not initially envisioned to be industrial, so we're not in West Creek. So I'm not going to speak to what it was originally versus what it is today. The late entry of the TOD had nothing to do with Tract. There was no discussions with the county happening between Tract. That was something that the property owner was interested in, approached the county deemed it was appropriate to include it. So that decision was made by the county and the property owner, and had nothing to do with Tract. In terms of how many generators, I think we've heard a couple different numbers. As I've said before, we are happy to do some additional modeling and testing to see what noise levels would be with all of them running. So that is something that we are more than happy to do. There was some question about public health and emissions, and you can't smell diesel. These generators are highly regulated, and so the spewing and belching, I respectfully say it's some hyperbole. These are clean machines. I mean, I would fathom to guess several of you have generators attached to your homes as well. And so, again, I think these are machines that are highly regulated for air emissions, for air quality, for sound. All of these things are measured, tracked, and permitted, and if you violate, there's a consequence.
What's the consequence?
Consequence can range from fines. If you ignore fines, there can be criminal or civil charges brought. They can shut the facility down. If they revoke the permit, you cannot legally operate. There was some question about on-site storage of water and how that would be serviced and whether any part of the project's infrastructure would tie into the public system. All of the infrastructure that conveys the water or wastewater to the site or from the site will become public infrastructure. So if a water line extends down Hockett, that would be, obviously it's not a private water line. It would become part of the municipal system. And so, yes, the project infrastructure would be putting new infrastructure that would benefit the entire system in the community. The above ground storage is one of those that's filled once and it's an emergency. But again, I want to go back to when I talked about the air-cooled closed loop facility, the numbers of the amount of water used in the facility is tantamount to an office building of this size. It is tantamount to the amount of water Mosaic uses in a given day. At the peak, it will use the same amount of water that the entire Mosaic subdivision uses on average in a day. So the above ground, the on-site storage that will be filled with municipal water, it's not groundwater, it's not a well. We're putting all these things in development conditions so that they live on. Mr. Cooper had asked about ambient light overnight. I'm not sure where he went. Yes. So we have not talked with the county yet about lighting standards. We're happy to have those discussions. The facility does have lighting. It is a 24/7 facility. It runs all the time. And so we're happy to have some conversations about lighting and ways we can mitigate lighting so it's not impacting certainly your master bedroom or your living area. So in terms of how we're held, or an operator, landowner, developer, how anyone is held to standards. So there's a regulatory system in place. It applies equally to all developers. If developers choose not to follow the standards in place, they are doing it at their business risk. I'm sorry to hear that the developer, I'm sorry, I don't know where the woman was who spoke about the dark skies. I'm sorry they didn't do that. That was, in my book, that's not okay. These are things that, to me, these development conditions and proffers, they're contract. They're contract between the community and whoever's operating and owns the site. And so if those are violated, they're violating their contract. And we as Tract do not stand by that. We will not violate the terms of our contract with our communities, with our partners. It's not our business practice. In terms of future users, just like anyone, if you sell your house and you're still best friends with your neighbors and people who move in are really crappy neighbors, they have to follow rules, and if they don't follow rules, there's consequences. You might have to report them, they might have to get a violation, it might have to go through a process. But there's ways to do that, and this is no different. So we would pass the rules on to our operators, and I would say, is it working? Okay. There are bad actors in the world, and There are people who might pay the fines and not care about it. The majority of big tech, the majority of any company doesn't actually operate like that. They're bad actors. I'm not going to discount they're bad actors. But responsible operators, responsible business people will not take actions or ignore taking actions that could cost them millions and millions and millions of dollars by having their facility shut down, which is the end consequence. Ms. Thompson had asked about some other facilities. Happy to look into those. Again, this is the direction the county pointed us, as they had most of the TOD meetings here as well. So I apologize if there was a better location. This is sort of where we were directed. In terms of wildlife studies, we would love to see the studies that you have read. We do environmental diligence as part of any site and mitigate as needed. You know, this land is zoned agricultural, it's not farmed. So when we're talking about a loss of agricultural land, this is not actively farmed, it's not active agriculture land. But I think, you know, to the extent of any negative impacts, again, happy to read the studies you have. We will continue to do studies on wildlife impacts. We'll go through all the necessary permitting with the state around wildlife impacts, and certainly we'll take any mitigations necessary. So Ms. Bridges asked about a honeybee study. Again, I think we've talked about the bees a couple times. We're gonna go look at that. The cumulative impact of the generators from emissions running on a low load. So they're tested on a lower load. That's how testing is done. They don't fully blast for testing. So testing is done at a partial load. That's the way it's written in the permits. We're not allowed to run them for more hours. We are capped by the state permit, and we're capped by what will be conditional use permit conditions that will say it will only be used for backup power. So we can't run them because it's a peak demand. We can't run them because we don't want to pay peak charges. We can't run them because we just feel like it. We can't run them to boost the power. That's not how the equipment works. So we're not allowed to do that. So they are run for testing and in emergency circumstances, all of which are out of the operator's control. There was a question about on-site generation in the gas line that runs through the property. So there's no capacity in that gas line. So even if we wanted to, we couldn't tap into that gas line. It's fully committed. So we're not proposing on-site generation. We're happy to put a condition in to bold, underline, italics, the TOD prohibition against it. That is not something. If we get to the point, the hypothetical that was mentioned, that we have an operator ready to move in and we don't have power, that's our business risk. That's our business risk, because we've promised would I be sitting out there. I have children. I have 2 of them.
Watch it.
There is scientific evidence. There's studies, and there's TikTok. And there's Facebook, and there's evolutions of existing conditions that change. There's technology that advances. I do feel like this can be compatible with the right setbacks, the right buffers, the right mitigations. Yes. Yes.
You would have your parents move in to a 55+ community next to a data center? There's no silence.
Yes.
So you wouldn't be mad. You wouldn't be mad. You wouldn't be mad if you were a property owner and you didn't work for Tract. You would still say that.
You asked me the question. I said I believe in science, I believe in education, and the information that I have educated myself as an individual, not as an employee of Tract, as an individual, I have ethics, myself, I have morals, and I can stand up here and do this and say what I just said to you.
If you weren't in Virginia, would you have brought that Wahoo Cup? If you were in Texas, would you have brought that Wahoo Cup as a prop?
Okay, so the next question we had was around other sites that we've had denied, and I'm gonna look to my friends as I knock everything over. Do we have, what's the number of sites, projects we've had not approved? 3? 3. We'll go back and double check that. But those are 3 that have gone through a public process and have not had the outcome that we were looking for. And so I assume Dr. Schwartz, I apologize if that's not the right title, talked about that she was an Enrico resident. My apologies, if you sign in on the sheet, we'll make sure we get you on the list for future meetings. If you have other neighbors as well, I can give you the project email address. If they email us, we're happy to add them so you can find out about future meetings. I'm not sure there was a question in her comment. She talked a lot about the health impact on wetlands. Again, we go through the required permitting. Any impacts to wetlands will be mitigated as required by the state. We follow state rules, state code. The health impacts, again, I think we've talked about stressing the water system. I think with the switch to air cool, we have shown that this will not stress the public water system. The use of fossil fuels, the only fossil fuels used on the site are for the diesel generators. And okay, and then there was some questions around air quality from the generators, impact on on livestock. So I think there's a lot of anecdotal stuff. I would look to our environmental, do we have scientific studies around livestock impacts? No. We're happy to look for some and see what we can find. I'm not denying that there are anecdotes out there. So. I would, if you could send that information. Well, thank you for using a data center to answer the question. Oh, so that was the end of our 10. So I think you were next. If you want to go right ahead.
All right, hello. My name is Christy Payne. I live in District 1 in Western Goochland. And in March, Valley Link Dominion Energy kindly, so kindly, put my road that I live on and the land and the house that I've been in for 28 years and all my precious neighbors' houses, put us on a public map with threat of utility eminent domain so that high power 765 kV transmission line could be built to provide energy to data centers 3 hours away from where I live. All for the better good, of course. So you can imagine that what we've lived through in the last 60 days, 90 days, still going through it. And I will say that right now the line has been moved off of my road. It will go to the SCC. The SCC could choose to put it back. The concern that we have that we lived through that to provide energy to data centers 3 hours away, and you have submitted a pre-application to be the first data center in Goochland County. You can imagine our fear. What is it going to look like when the data center is in our county? We've learned so much. You just can't imagine how much education we have gotten on data centers and high voltage transmission lines. So I just want you to just understand that fear, where we come from. So let me get into some other things Tract is such a young company. It was just founded in 2022, just merely 4 years old, very young company. And I know that you stated that Tract did not consider this location until after the TOD passed. But I just want to go over some dates to make sure we're just all on the same page here. Our county has stated that you reached out on November 17th with interest in this location. Of course, you know the TOD was passed November 6th. They're saying you reached out November 17th. We know that NDA was signed November 2nd, 2023 at 5:47 p.m. with Jessica Bennett from Tract. But I want to mention that the pre-application was filed under Valco Goochland LLC, which was formed on October 1st, 2025. So I just want to look at that date and have that in mind. And my understanding is that the county had mentioned this 800 acres to the public, and when it was mentioned, finally approved, was October 20th, 2025. So I just want to look at those dates and keep that in mind. I want to circle back real quick to that SEC hearing that happened on June 16th regarding the West Creek Loop. I just got to get you, look me in the eye and give me some confirmation on this. So the documents for that hearing is public for June 16th, in which it was talking about the power needed for Eli Lilly. And many of us have read through those public documents. And Eli Lilly hadn't submitted an ELOA, but the data centers that were potentially looking at the TOD, they paid the $250,000 you got paid per generator to look at it. And I just need to make sure I understand, because on Exhibit 29, there is a map that you can pull up, and it says on Exhibit 29 that there is a 1,200 MW data center load, and it's right next to Reader's Branch. I'm getting confirmation from you that wasn't Plan B. That is not Tract, not at all, never was. So it's just somebody else. I appreciate that. I really do. I really appreciate that. Now I want to go back real quick. When you were answering those questions a few minutes ago, you were talking about how you're going to pass those rules to those operators and you're going to hold them to it, and you're going to make sure that doesn't happen. And that sounds great. But the problem is, because there's no completed data center campuses, we got nothing to compare it to. This could all be make believe. I can't believe what you're going to do, because I don't have anywhere I can tell my board of supervisors, you need to fly out and go over to Arizona and look at that completed data center campus, and you need to talk to that county and find out, did they do what they said they were going to do? What did the people experience that lived through this? They have nowhere to go to see it, smell it. By the way, when we talked about smell, I just have to ask you, did you smell the fires from Canada? You know, because you were saying how the smell doesn't, I don't know, most of us probably smelled those fires from Canada. But let's get back to the question I had. We got nowhere to go. We got nowhere to send the Board of Supervisors to go look to see if what you say you're going to do is what you're going to do. There's nothing completed. And I just don't want my precious Goochland County to be your guinea pig. All right, let's see. Let me go real quick now. Real quick. Okay, I want to talk about real quick the EY tax generation analysis. All right. Okay. On page 4 of the EY tax generation analysis, you assume 900 MW, 83 billion in capital investment, and 351 permanent jobs. Which of those numbers are contractually guaranteed? Which are just simply assumptions? I have read that inside and out. Page 4 says the analysis is based on discussions with Tract. What specific information did Tract provide to EY? And did EY independently verify any of it? On page 6, EY states the figures are not to be taken as predictions or promises of performance. If they're not promises, why should Goochland rely on these revenue projections when making a zoning decision? The report assumes 9 buildings, and the report changes. You've been talking about 12 buildings, because I think that is what you said originally, or what we got. That report says 9, so we're going back and forth on our buildings. But the report assumes 9 buildings built over 3 years. Whoops. Is Tract committing to that schedule, or could construction stop after one of or 2 of the buildings? Page 5 assumes the land will be rezoned, and developed as a data center campus. If the rezoning is approved, what prevents the property from later being sold to another developer with a different plan? Your report projects only 351 permanent jobs for a 900 MW campus. Can you explain why Goochland should accept a project of this size for that number of permanent employees? The report assumes no tax abatements or discounts. Will Tract commit tonight that it will never seek local tax incentives or tax relief from Goochland County? Page 6 says the model assumes 100% of property tax revenue go to the county's general fund. Page 6 says that. But also acknowledges dedicated repayment obligations are not analyzed, have not been looked at. What public costs were left out of this model? The report projects tax revenue, but where in the EY report are the costs to Goochland for emergency services, road maintenance, infrastructure, water, planning staff, and utility upgrades? The report focuses on projected tax revenue and assumptions, and it does not include a comprehensive cost analysis. Your EY report repeatedly calls these estimates assumptions and not promises. If the actual project is smaller, creates, or is never fully come to fruition, what legally enforceable protection will Goochland County have? And I think we've talked about that. I was going to talk about the datacentermaplist.com, where we can go over all of your projects and that are listed as not planned or in planning, proposed, under construction, or land being marketed, but I think we've covered that. I will end with this. I don't know if any of you here pick your newest location to go look at for Tract, for a data center campus. You got 2. You got where she lives and you got where her mom lives. That can give you a place to go look. Thank you for your time. Thank you. I appreciate it.
My name is Susan Rufus. I live in the eastern part of the county, over by Richmond Country Club. And I'm really not understanding how we got here in the first place. Because many of us, maybe all of us, were here at meetings last year ad nauseum for the proposed additional 900 acres to be added to the technology overlay district. And my understanding was not one resident was in favor of that. Not one. Yet, only one of the 5 supervisors on the Board of Supervisors voted with their constituents. The other 4 did not vote with their constituents and passed this additional 900 acres into the technology overlay district. So I don't even know why we're here in the first place, because our supervisors were not voting with us. Here we are, and you're here to promote this project, and you're also here to collect information from us as to how we feel about this project. And I think you've gotten ample examples of how the residents of Goochland feel about this project, and we really do not want it for many reasons. But that being said, I do have a question. Nobody's addressed this yet, I believe. But what happens in a case of an emergency where one of these several huge data center buildings catches on fire? And what kind of toxic substances are thrown out into the air? And how can you put that monster out? The other thing I'd like to say as far as the smell of things, have you ever driven by a paper mill? They really smell. That smell does not dissipate just because you're 1,000 feet away. Just saying. But anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you for your attention.
Hi, my name's Annette Jones, and I live in the western end of the county. I'm probably going to do something I shouldn't do, and that's throw the script down. Your traffic analysis is bull. My life was destroyed 14 years ago because of that very area of Route 6. And it's not just my life, it's the life of my family, my kids, and my grandchildren. That area of Route 6 has never been okay. And now you're talking about putting another break and median in that area of that road that very well almost took my life. And praise God, I'm standing here today. So whatever study you have done is not accurate, and it needs to be done again, and it needs to be looked over the decades of the lives that have been taken and have been destroyed because of that area of Route 6. You need to look hard. Thank God for our fire and rescue and Chief Ferguson for carrying me down the road and keeping me alive. Now I'll try to get back on script. According to that June 16th SEC hearing and the transcripts, it reads, as of March 3rd, 2026, Dominion has 15 batches of large load DP or delivery point request. Further, the company response to subsection E for the interrogatory indicates that the company's intention to process the batches at rate of 1 batch per 12 months. Therefore, a simple calculation would indicate that as of March 3rd, 2026, the company has a large load queue connection extending approximately 15 years. You aren't even in the queue yet. You've paid your ELOA and it's been executed, but you just said earlier you're not even in the queue. What are you going to do to ensure that you get bumped above the other 15 projects that are in the queue? And that's only saying if they can accomplish one of those per year. This is not what I'm saying. This is what is in the actual transcripts. I don't know what you got for that, but okay. You committed to saying that you would not drill any wells on the property. Would you also commit to absolutely never dumping any wastewater into our natural waterways? We're experiencing that in Louisa County right now. That they have approved, the DEQ has approved to dump the wastewater from the Amazon facilities into Lake Anna. I have been through the whole eminent domain, as well as my friend Christy and the rest of us in Western Goochland. But what I've done a little step farther is I've also looked at PJM's 7-year rollout of what's going to happen if this Joshua Falls to Yeet transmission line goes forward. It's not good for Goochland. The only leg we have to stand on is that we don't put data centers in this county. That we have a leg to fight and stand to say, you don't need to come here with your transmission lines. We don't have a data center here. Otherwise, it's going to rip right through our entire county, not the western end, but the entire county, to get over an estimated of 2,300 megawatts that they're saying the load is for West Creek alone right now. That's a lot of power. And your little 230s aren't going to do nothing. It's not going to be enough. So everyone in this room, you better be worried about eminent domain, and I'm talking from District 1 all the way to District 5, because it's going to come, because they've already told us that this eminent domain is for data centers. So they have to stay out of Goochland for that alone.
name is Crystal Day, and I do not live in the county, though I live pretty close, and I have friends and family that live nearby in the county as well and in neighboring counties. I am a Virginia resident. All of your friends, as you call them, your cohort that are sitting over there, how many of them are Virginia residents? How many of them, and if there's one, okay, there's one. Okay, good. Will you be here when that data center goes up? Will you actually go to that data center? Take your sleeping bag or whatever else outside and lay down next to a data center maybe 500 to 1,000 feet away to actually make sure you can study to make sure the guidelines that were expressed are actually being upheld? Do you plan to do that? Because I did some research about Tract, and I'm sure a lot of people here are now finding out about this company that has decided they have an interest in Goochland County and erecting a data center here. You're based in Denver, Colorado. Your interests do not lie within the Goochland County residents, Mosaic residents, the people here who will be bearing witness, listening, watching, basically smelling all of the sensory effects that a data center will cause, short-term and long-term. Do you know what a decibel is measured by? Do you know what 40 to 55 decibels actually sounds like long-term? Have you actually taken the time to listen to a soundbite of 40 to 55 decibels for more than 20 seconds? That's my challenge. I actually want to propose that the entire team, and you tonight as well, and you can do it here for everyone to listen to, if you feel brave enough, what that actually sounds like just over the course of even 60 seconds. Since AI is the model that you swear by, and what is now deciding to impact the lives of residents and citizens within Goochland County and throughout the entire country, I did a little bit of research. I used AI for that. Exactly, boo indeed. Just researching what is the impact for 40 decibels long-term sound. 40 decibels to 50 decibels. This range is associated with a lack of sleep. Prolonged exposure may also cause headaches, irritability, and chronic exposure to sound levels above this range or in this range can also lead to impaired cognitive function, especially in children. That's just mentioning children. The people that were up here before mentioned wildlife. I feel very strongly about that. What's the impact on animals that are within that range? Negative. Terrible. Some of the descriptive words that you can qualify a data center being put up anywhere around that. Deer, birds, all wildlife, all living forms do not want to be by a data center. They do not want to listen to a humming sound. I have a generator that I hear sometimes about, I'd say 250 feet from my residence. I can't stand listening to that any time of day. I can only imagine how hard it will be to be by that permanently. So the impacts of that are astounding. And the fact that you are not stressing public health in a way where you might have seen some studies, but you're calling it anecdotal. It isn't anecdotal. It's actually happening throughout the world right now. There's radiation concerns, and that hasn't even been addressed yet. Radiation emissions actually a chief concern. And I know that if you use AI, you'll see that it might mention low emissions of radiation might be a concern. Long-term, is what you're not thinking of, and you're actually not concerned about whatsoever, because you don't have to witness it and you don't have to live near it. Big tech, just like big pharma, essentially, and there's a correlation when it comes to developers and those who are deciding to use the land for their own benefit and their own pockets. That is essentially what this boils down to. And I'm so appreciative of everyone here who has been taking the time to take a stand and speak out against big tech and against companies like Tract, a young company, who's deciding to lay down roots in Virginia. I want to ask everyone with Tract and everyone here today what the motive with that would be. What is the motive for Tract? Money. Money. And who else is lining Tract's pockets? I will say, if you're signing NDAs and you can say as much as you want all day and night that you're following business protocol, I beg the question, is that really true? Your idea of transparency and your idea of truth was null and void based upon your studies and upon the guidelines. So your best interests in Goochland County and Virginia residents in general, it's obvious that isn't the case. Thank you to everyone here. I am so appreciative, and honestly, I also want to stress, wildlife includes trees too, and we've already bore witness to trees being cut down for infrastructure gain. That takes away from those who actually struggle with respiratory concerns as well. We don't want more pollutants, we want our land to be the way it is. Look long and hard at what you're doing and start questioning, am I working with a company that is morally bankrupt, and am I siding with someone who doesn't even care about my own concerns, let alone Virginia residents and everyone else here? Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Ken Knight, 9229 Cerulean Place. We'll be backing directly up to two of your data centers proposed behind us. We have brought up about the natural gas line, and thank goodness it doesn't have capacity. I'm so happy about that. But that is located a couple hundred feet from our home. When you build these data centers down there, going down this natural gas line as it enters into your property, there's nothing but trees. How are you going to mitigate the sound coming out of that and headed towards our property? You're basically creating a sound tunnel. So my formal question to you will be, given the natural gas distribution line running through the property, has Tract obtained a written encroachment agreement from the pipeline operator to construct berms or sound barriers within or adjacent to the properties? Pipeline operators don't give easements. They limit what you can build next to them, including berms or any kind of earthworks or anything else, because of water controls and eroding lines. So how are you going to control this sound pipeline that's going to come running out of your property and hit Cerulean, Citrine, Bellini, Potter's Wheel, Mosaic Creek Boulevard, straight out right? How are you going to mitigate when you can't build anything across it to stop the sound? And I will say this, it's pretty bad when you spend, according to the Ernest Young report, you're going to spend $84 billion to create 351 jobs. That is ludicrous.
My name is Kyle Linden Booth. I live also on Cerulean. I'm directly in your noise study under sound receptor number 2. I'm quite concerned about noise, so I'll start with that. For our Board of Supervisors and Commissioners information, Dominion issued in the month of July PJM issued 3 alerts in the month of July asking all data centers to be ready to operate because there was a lack of electricity in the Dominion zone. They declared an emergency. I do not know whether they actually had to run, but that's going to become more and more often what's going to happen during peak times during the year. So 3 times during the month of July, they asked all the data centers to be ready to operate their generators as an emergency. So a lot of us are familiar with the train line that runs along the river here. The train line is infrequent, but it does happen. It's been there for years, so we're all very much used to it. The train line operates when we hear it at between 23 and, so we're 2.3 miles, sorry, Mosaic is 2.3 miles away from the train line. 33 dBA and 55 dBc is the noise that's emitted from the train when it reaches our neighborhood. You're proposing to have more noise than that in our reaching our neighborhood. When you go from 55 dBc, which what you're proposing at R2, R1, and R3, I think says 62 dBc. dBc is what we feel comes through through our walls. That 7 dBc is equal to 3.4 times more noise. That's what we're going to feel, and that's really what my main concern is. In your view study for the Mosaic areas, which would be view number 2, view number 1, you show a difference in height for where the data centers, buildings are going to be located relative to our properties. Those buildings are located at positions that are about 60 feet higher than the top of, because they're at tops of hill. They are about 60 feet above, sorry, the top of the building is about 60 feet above the top of our roof line. My question to the modelers, when you consider the chillers that are on the rooftops, I believe that's what your plan is, what most people do, will those chillers be, was the sound study done to take into consideration the DBC sound that comes off those chillers and how far it goes when it's that much higher than all of our buildings? And in the noise study, you show that they are above the line of the tree line. So I would expect that would completely travel above the trees and into our neighborhood. DBA is mitigated much more by the trees. DBC is much less mitigated. I would ask, my question to you would be to ask if you would update your sound study to make sure it shows that all of the generators and the chillers are operating in the sound study and that it's tested. And I'd also like to see the DBC lines extended. All you show is your DBA lines, which shows 50 reaching into the neighborhood, doesn't show the DBC lines. I believe that would go way into our neighborhood, just like we hear the sounds all the way currently today. So please update your sound studies if it hasn't been taken into consideration. Thank you.
I'm back. First, I just wanted to say to everyone who's still here tonight that May Navarre, who is our delegate in the Virginia State House of Delegates representing the 57th District and recently elected to represent us, was here tonight. I had reached out to her and asked her to come to this meeting so she could hear firsthand what the constituents that she represents had to hear tonight, or we're going to say tonight, and she was here until just about 9 o'clock. So I would encourage all of you to write to her tomorrow and thank her for being here and doing her job to represent us and let her know again how we feel about this. I also felt like it was important to say that Eastern Goochland County is not anti-business. We're not anti-business in any way. In fact, you don't know me, I don't know you, I know you're from Tract. This isn't personal at all. This is simply business, as they say. We don't want you. We don't want your operators. So again, this isn't personal at all. We welcomed CarMax. We welcome a huge Capital One facility. I think many people are even excited about Eli Lilly coming in. We don't want a data center. And I say that because somebody also mentioned here that in November, there was a meeting with the Board of Supervisors, who again, are supposed to represent us, that lasted into the wee hours of the morning, past midnight. And as she said, not a single person spoke in favor of having a data center, and yet here we are again. So I would simply remind our Board of Supervisors, those who are here tonight, that we have a democracy in this country, and they are representatives of us. And I think we've made it really clear how we feel about this. And if the application is not withdrawn, I would simply say that I think many of us would be very disappointed in our representation. Thank you.
I'm Paula Margolis. I live in Mosaic. I moved into Mosaic in December of 24. In July of 25, the TOD was announced. Since then, I've been to many meetings of the supervisors, the planners, listening sessions, etc. And in several of the meetings that the supervisors were there, they were also there to listen. They said, I'm here to listen, I'm here to hear you. And my comment was, well, I hope you're here to act on what you hear. That didn't happen. I'm hoping that you are here to act on what you hear. We moved into this neighborhood because it was beautiful, because we have friends there, we have land there, it's beautiful, we want to spend the rest of our lives there. And that's been, since this has been announced, it's been 12 months of anxiety. Not what I signed up for. Okay. Another thing that I want to say is that you mentioned that the rate increases that were recently announced from Dominion were for the fuel, I believe you said. My letter said it was for transmission charges. And then the last thing I want to say is, you know, again, there are going to be all these standards, and particularly with the noise. And you say it's, you know, that there are consequences for not complying with the standards. How is that going to be monitored? How often is that going to be monitored? Who's going to monitor it? If we call, who do we call to complain? I have a meter on my phone, an app, and today in my neighborhood, they did the lawn mowing. And I was in my living room that faces my backyard. And when the lawnmower was in there, I looked at my app, and it was 60 decibels. Okay, and it was loud, okay? It came into my house. One of my favorite things of living where I live is to spend time on my back patio with the yard that I recently spent a lot of money on, landscaping, and which I just enjoy. I spend hours out there, I love it. Am I gonna be able to do that anymore? You know, please, 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 hear us. Please don't do this to us. Thank you.
My name is Kathy Crockett, and I live in the western end of the county, but I do want to read this part of the Virginia Constitution. I read it at the transmission line meeting as well. It says in part that further it shall be the Commonwealth's policy to protect its atmosphere, lands, and waters from pollution, impairment, or destruction for the benefit, enjoyment, and general welfare of the people of the Commonwealth. You don't even live there. I mean, I don't know how much more plain this can be. You all come here, you sign NDAs, and you've admitted you have, even though they didn't go through, that's irrelevant. You signed an NDA. You're not being upfront with the people. Your presentation, you skipped over the stuff that people would have had a lot of questions about. One of them is the pollution going in the air, and you had said on your screen, it says 100. weight of particulates are going to be polluting the air. Now, if you've got, and that was only with 100 diesel generators, I believe is what she said. So if we're going to have 300 diesel generators, you're going to have 300 particulate measurements. Where does it stop? We've all seen the videos. We do research. We're an educated public here. We've seen the smoke coming out of the top. Do they not have any type of mitigation to filter the smoke coming out of the diesel generators? Do they not have mufflers? You said something about mufflers. Why don't y'all just do that stuff? Why does the public here have to complain to get you to let us do these things for you? Just like 1,000 square feet, 1,000 feet on one of the buffer zones for Mosaic. Why would you just not offer that to everybody? You're doing the least amount you possibly can to get this data center in here, because everything you do costs money. And you all are all about the bottom line. You don't care about anybody else in here. You don't care about people. I'm fighting transmission lines in 2 states, in Indiana and in Virginia. And if people in here don't know it, the entire county of Goochland is in the study area for the transmission lines. And it will be until the hearing is completed. You've got next era, previous employee that is going to be sitting on the SCC board that's going to decide where these transmission lines go. This whole thing is just a takeover of everything that we have worked hard for our entire life. I had to leave a place at Chester because of the Shoe Smith dump. And I'm sure y'all have heard about what's going on there. Now I've looked at having to move away from my home because I have a pacemaker. Dr. Ben Carson made a study and presented it to the SCC, and you all don't even have it. He says 3.1 miles away from a transmission line. We've got 4 coming into Goochland right now because of the data center need. I don't understand why people, you all need to get your act together. If we're not easy here, okay? We are not easy. You're gonna have to do your homework. You're gonna have to forecast accurately and with integrity your numbers, because they're gonna be checked. And I appreciate you standing up here, because it's a lot to have to deal with when you have this many educated people. But how many people in here have a pacemaker? Just curious. Anybody have a pacemaker? I have one. I'm young. 3.1 miles, and they're looking at putting it right next door to my house. And when they asked me if I was affected, no, you're not affected. I said, what's your guideline for being affected? 100 feet. 100 feet. This whole thing has just been infuriating from the get-go. They want to put a transmission line through my grandmother's creek and waterfall in Indiana that was created by a glacier. And they said, oh, we can put it anywhere we want. I said, well, no, I think the Army Corps of Engineers might have something to say about it. They said, well, how about if we move it over here? Well, it's still on my property. I don't want it. And now it's in front of 12 homes. They don't care. You all just want to get this stuff done. You want to move in and sell it and be gone. And you can tell everybody here all the promises you want about the fact that you're going to make sure that this is done right and these people are going to stand by what you plan. Please.
So that was 10, but I think just 3 more folks.
No, we're just waiting.
Okay, all right. So time check, it's 9:35. So I will go through these answers. I don't know how much more time we'll have for comments, but if you have a question or comment, we have the note cards in the back. You can write your question down. We'll take that. And then I encourage everyone as
We'd rather hear comments than hear your answers.
So I have a requirement to respond. That's what I was told earlier. I had to respond. So I'm going to, whoops, I'm having issues. I will get this set up. We do have a project website that has launched. It's Tuckahoe Tech Park Info, alloneword.com. I will get my computer back up and running in a second. There'll be a QR code up here as well. So I will go through these responses. Thanks, Dan. I think I need power. You can find a power cord on my computer. Can you do that? Thank you. So I will go through these responses, and then, like I said, if anyone has questions that we do not get to, the note cards are available. We also have a project email, tuckahoetechpark@tract.com. Many of you already use them. Encourage you to email in questions. We do read them all. The whole project team reads them all. And that is what is feeding a lot of the FAQs on the website. So when you go to the website, the FAQs are under the heading facts. Just if you go looking for it, that's where you will find them. And we will continually update the website as we get more questions in, and as we get more information on some of these questions we've already heard. So, sorry, I'm trying to get the QR code up. So there was some questions about the timing of the forming of the entity that is the applicant, and how that relates to the whole timeline. So, we had no discussions with the county prior to November 17th. We had discussions with the landowner prior to that. Hence the forming of the entity. That is typical of what developers do. They form these special entities, they're just an LLC, entities that they use to transact on. So we formed the entity when we began conversations with the property owner, not even knowing if they go anywhere. So once we get under, we have a process we go through, but we have to have the entity formed. Hence we formed the entity slightly before. That's the timeline, how it went through. The 1,200 megawatts is not us. Okay, you asked me to. It's not us. We have a 900 megawatt application in to Dominion. The other data centers that are in the SCC study, the 1,200 megawatts, are not us. They're not sites we're looking at. We have nothing to do with those. You talked a little about proof of who Tract is, and that we don't have data centers up and running. It's true, we don't. We are a young company, you pointed out. These things take time to go through the process. So a company formed when we were formed is very unlikely to have anything built and operated at this point. But we do have a couple data points we can point folks to, including your elected officials. We have worked in communities all over the country. We have mayors, county commissioners, state legislators, governors, all folks that we've interacted in on other projects who are more than happy to take calls from elected officials wanting to know if we're the real deal, wanting to know if we're legit. So I am happy to provide those contacts to your Board of Supervisors if they want to hear how we've operated in other communities, how we have interacted, and where those projects are. Like I said, in Reno, we're in vertical construction. We have NVIDIA going into that space. So that's a bit of the proof of concept of what Tract was built on, and we have formed these relationships in other locations and can certainly have those people speak for us. I cannot produce an operational campus. So the question about the tax generation. So nothing in a tax generation analysis, regardless if EY does it, takes our info, the county does it, is a guarantee. Model is a model. It is built on a set of assumptions. We provide EY a set of assumptions. They do a model and they provide us the report. So what information do we provide? The megawatts, the capital investment numbers, the value of the per megawatt cabinet. There is a series of inputs. There's actually a page, I don't know which page it is, that shows the inputs that we provide them. So that's what we provide them, and then they do the analysis and send it back to us. We can't promise it for a variety of reasons. The tax levels and rates aren't in our control. Can they go up? Sure. We've modeled the current sales tax exemption in the state of Virginia is going away in 2035, which is how the law stands today. That could change. There's nothing we could do about it. If it goes sooner, it's more money. If it extends longer, the exemption will carry on. There would be less state tax revenue going into it. So that's why that language is in there around predictions and promises. And again, we provide that, and the county can verify the assumptions that are in it. Again, no business, no one would guarantee, when Mosaic was developed, H.H. Hunt didn't say, hey, I promise you this is how much tax money it's going to be in. I promise, and here it is, and I will contractually agree to it. It's just not a development practice that happens. So, we are more than happy to have the county verify. If you guys would like to take it to a third party to verify it, you have the study in its entirety. I'm not holding anything back. That is the exact information we get from EY. Are we committing to the schedule of the delivery? No, that's one of the assumptions that's built into it. You have to make assumptions. We're assuming that when the power becomes available, the buildings that go with it will be built. So that is the assumption. We've built it year over year. If it bumps out a year, then it slightly changes the model. It will not change it by an order of magnitude that is significant. We're still talking nearly $1 billion over 20 years. So it's a significant amount of money. Can we sell it to someone else? Yes. But as I've said, the zoning approvals, the conditional use permit, run with the land. So when they buy the land, they buy the approvals. If they want to do something different, they have to come back and talk to you guys. So that is what, we can't sell it and somebody come in and just put up a distribution facility or 300 homes. They have a zoning approval that they are purchasing as well. It runs with the land. In terms of public costs of the services required by data centers, they're relatively low, and we can get you some money. I can get you some money. No, that was a joke. I can get you some data around the costs to the communities. There are relatively low services needed for the facilities, but again, I'm happy to get that. And make that part of the application materials as we go forward. Fire. Somebody asked about fire. There are billions of dollars of equipment in these buildings. There's a lot of fire protection built in. The system that is put in most data centers, if it detects smoke, it sucks all the oxygen out of the space so it can't ignite. So that's first. And then you have sprinkler systems and from there. So the goal of that first line of defense is obviously to, candidly protect the equipment, right? So we don't want it to catch fire. It is billions of dollars worth of equipment, and it catching fire does nobody good. So there's extensive fire protection systems that are built into these structures that if it detects a fire, it can quickly put it out. If it doesn't work,
Lithium battery fire?
they're not batteries.
You don't have any type of lithium backup batteries in this facility?
Do we have lithium backups? Yes, there are small lithium backups that are in place. So an explosion anywhere is going to cause damage, regardless of the facility. If your home exploded, it would cause a lot of damage. So, there comes a point, there's nothing, fire suppression is built into the system. We pay taxes as county residents. If there is something the county feels the fire department is lacking in their ability to respond to this type of facility, that's one of those development conditions we can talk about with them. The traffic analysis, our traffic engineer, that was you, right? Yep. Our traffic engineer is sitting over here. He missed the memo on red shirts and wore one. He heard every word you said, am I right, Omar? And he will go back and look at that and make sure our data is representative of the data that's out there. I understand. We will go back and triple check that to make sure it is included. I actually want to call on Brandon to talk a little about the queue process, the batch process. You'd asked about, one batch for every 6 months or 12 months. So Brandon, I don't know his exact title, but he's our power expert. He is a resident of Virginia. He lives in Northern Virginia. He has a data center in his neighborhood. I'm going to give him the microphone. He can talk about Dominion.
Thanks, Kara. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brandon Smith, and I'm the VP of Utility Development for Tract. I want to first say I understand all of your concerns. I hear all of your concerns. I appreciate being in Virginia and having arguably the most educated communities that you can encounter in terms of data centers. That is a win-win for everyone. That helps to develop what is necessary for us to ultimately build these data centers. So again, I want to commend you, number one, for all the research. All the questions have been tremendous. We are listening. And again, I understand all the concerns around power, around cost. I have these same conversations with my family. I'm a Dominion customer. I do not want to see my bills go up either. So we're all with you there. In terms of the process, there was a question about where are we in the queue. So I first want to say what the queue does. The queue records your position in the line, but the queue does not dictate what your energization date will be. We believe that energization will occur within 5 to 7 years. We do not believe it will take 15 years or however many years one believes it will think, given the size of that queue. The next thing, the queue rules constantly change. They constantly change. And each time the rules change, there are less applications that are submitted. So we are anticipating that those queue positions will begin to dwindle as those requirements to enter Dominion's queue will continue to change. It's just not ideal to have 15 batches. It's not. The State Corporation Commission has acknowledged that. Dominion acknowledges that. It is not in the best interest of anyone. So truly, they are trying to figure out which are the legitimate projects and then focus the resources on those legitimate projects. So that's how that works. There was a question about agreements. Do we have a letter agreement? Not at this time. We're early in the process. What we have executed, and I heard someone make mention of it, is ELOAs. Those are engineering letters of authorization. It costs $250,000 per substation. So for Tract, we've submitted to Dominion and executed 3 ELOAs, and we've also written a check for $750,000 so they can begin to study our project. And so far, the project has moved through the distribution side of their business. That's the side that provides power to all of our homes directly. And now that project is going to move forward to its transmission side of the business, where it will get into the queue, continue to move through the process, and it will get its energization date. Again, an energization date that we believe will be within 5 to 7 years. So I'll pause there for the moment and take any other power questions. Sir, I will exit so that you can get your time.
I have a few more responses and then we'll let you speak, and that will probably be the last comment for the evening. Like I said, if there are others who have questions and comments, we have note cards. That is the QR code for the website, email address. These are all ways you can get your questions to us.
Why are we cutting it off at 10 p.m.?
Because the meeting was scheduled from 6 to 10 p.m.
We're still here.
So So I think the next question had to do with, would we agree not to dump in waterways? Yes. We will use the public sewer system. We will not dump in waterways.
Will you not get any water from the J, period?
All our water comes from municipal water.
In an emergency, are you going to be precluded from taking water from the J?
All of our water will come through the municipal system. We'll have no rights to water above and beyond anyone else in the county. The amount of water used in this facility is the same as a commercial building. So a commercial building, the Capital One campus, would not get special water privileges. We would not get special water privileges. There was some questions about radiation. The scientific evidence doesn't show radiation. EMFs is the term that's out there. Doesn't show them at dangerous levels. Your refrigerator, your microwave, your TV, your cell phone. So all of you that have a cell phone in your pocket there are EMFs that come off those. There's no scientific evidence that anything coming off a data center is harmful. One, people work in there, so certainly it is not harmful to the people who work in there, and it is not harmful to the people who live nearby or far away. Question about the natural gas line and sound. This is a really good one that I candidly hadn't really thought through, but I will tell you, we got to do whatever we got to do to mitigate the sound. So if we have to mitigate outside of the area of the gas line, so sound doesn't get into that corridor, that's what we have to do. Because at the property line, even where that opening crosses the property line, that is where we have to mitigate the sound to. And then a couple questions about running generators during peak demands. So again, if we're required by the utility to do that, we have to do that. Those runs are not days, they're peak hours. So when you think of, when your air conditioner kicks on full blast, that's the window. We're talking a couple hours in those emergency situations. There also was a question, some questions about noise and the DBA and DBC. So we've modeled both of those. Those are required under the TOD. Everyone has asked for a couple different ways to model that, which we have taken note of and can do. He also asked if the chillers are modeled on the roof. They are. So again, the sound study does accommodate that, but we're going to go back and make sure everything's modeled at full power, full running, everything to give you guys that sense. So he had asked it to update the sound study, which we will do.
Can they also extend it a little bit bigger than the map you've got? There's other subdivisions that it cuts off before you get to it.
I can check with them, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. There were a couple of comments which I'm not qualified to address around your feelings around the Board of Supervisors and their actions or lack of actions. I want to acknowledge that we heard them, but it is not my place to comment on them. I believe, I apologize if others got, the letter I saw from Dominion was around fuel charges. If you got a different one and have questions about it, our team would be more than happy to take a look at it and translate it out of utility speak. Who monitors it and how do you complain? So most zoning cases, sound studies, sound regulations, no different, if your neighbor's having a party at their house, you have to complain. And you call the county, and the county investigates it. This is the process that's set up. Something we talked literally this morning with Carrie and staff about, and a couple of the planning commissioners, was that we're happy to give a contact person to the county so they know who to call. So if Carrie gets a complaint from someone about noise, she can call Bob, the facilities manager, and Bob can look into it and coordinate with Carrie when she can come out, or whoever the inspectors can come out and look at stuff. So we're more than happy to provide someone so the county doesn't have to play, the telephone zero operator game to get a hold of someone. So we will give them a name to do that. I appreciated the comments around the Virginia Constitution and acknowledged that no, we are not Virginia residents. It's not uncommon for developers to do work all over the country, and we are set up as a national, actually international model. We have a team in Europe as well. So, you know, I acknowledge we're not Virginia residents. That doesn't mean we don't care. And I know you're going to disagree with me, but we do. It does matter to us. So I think that was everything we went through. I really apologize to the folks who, I'm going to let you speak. The folks who didn't get to speak, please, no card, email us, because we do want to hear from you. I do truly thank you all for coming. This was a big time investment for you to spend your evening here. And you've made it very clear that you're passionate about your community, and we heard that.
Has anybody's minds changed by this presentation? Anybody for more data centers? They came.
So we have heard feedback, we've heard requests for additional information. We're going to go back with our team. We're going to figure out the next steps for the project. We will continue to work with the county. Again, you know how to find us and to get questions and information to us. For anyone who didn't get a notice of the meeting, put your name on the list, please, so we can get you noticed in the future. And again, we appreciate everyone coming. Help yourself to any water and snacks on your way out.
Will you have a second meeting for those of us who didn't get a chance to offer comments, and for you to give us the information you said you have researched and get back?
We will provide, we might. I'm not going to definitively say yes or no at this point. Again, to get your comments and questions to us, you can email us, you can write them down. The information that we promised to follow up on, we will post on the website. And, you know, if you check back there, we'll continually refresh that as topics come up, as we get more information. So that's going to be your best source. And then I think as we figure out the next steps through the formal process, you know, we'll be noticing. No, everybody, there is one more gentleman down here who would like to speak, and I'd like to give him the microphone for a few minutes.
I was just telling your associate that not only did nobody here welcome you, which is understandable, but the county doesn't want you either. They don't want a company like you with the young families that work in that factory because they hate kids. I live in Mosaic. Mosaic is next to Reader's Branch, which is across the street from Centerville. All of those communities are over 55 and one of them over 62 that you can buy a house. Well, they did that because they don't want kids. Goochland County is 290 square miles, 44 miles length, and there's one school district. This is the high school for 290 square miles of Goochland County. Kids get on the bus in my neck of the woods. They're on a bus an hour to get to a school. An hour to get to a school. How can you expect a young 6-year-old or 8-year-old to be functioning after sitting an hour on a bus to go to school? And how does he do homework when he gets home after sitting an hour on a bus? And they haven't changed. They haven't put new districts in to cut the bus time down, and the reading proficiency is like 85, and the math proficiency is like 60-something. I mean, they're raising stupid kids here, and that's the way they want it. So they don't want kids going to Mosaic. It would have been a lovely community for Capital One or CarMax. I mean, that's how they screwed those two companies. They get them to come. There's no place to live here. If you have a young person, 30 years old, with 2 kids, they have zoned out the apartment complexes that are made for those people. I mean, you need a place to live, to save up money to buy a nice house. There's nothing here. So when you go on 288 in rush hour, either to or from work, it's a parking lot. Because all of those people in Capital One and CarMax are traveling south to Midlothian and Chesterfield and Bon Air to find places to live that welcome them and have schools that are built for young people. And then they told us in the beginning, well, the reason we picked this technology overlay zone is because it has the infrastructure. It doesn't. We have no water here. All our water, our drinking water, comes from Henrico County, a waste treatment plant. It's the water produced in a waste treatment plant. That comes to our house to drink. In Henrico County, Henrico Doctors Hospital, one of the biggest hospitals in Henrico, they can't get enough water from Henrico. How are you going to get water? They have to truck in from foreign locations 9,000-gallon trucks of water that are lined up at the hospital to supply the water that the hospital needs. Now, how are you going to get the water for it? And power, there's no power. A year ago, their plan was to build a modular nuclear reactor right on 250. Except they didn't understand that a modular nuclear reactor requires 100 to 300 million gallons of water a day. We get 2.5 million gallons of water from Henrico. How are they going to get 300 million gallons of water a day to run a power plant, a nuclear power plant? So they have not done anything that would deserve your attention. I mean, they're doomed to failure here. I wouldn't want to be failing here. I like to succeed. I mean, there's got to be a place for a data center that makes everybody happy. Goochland County has done nothing in the last 50 years to create any water. And the water that is successful here are golf courses, which this plan is geared to kill, but that water is not enough. Great farms who get water for agriculture, they only produce 25 gallons of water a minute. That's 35,000 gallons a day. That's not water for a data center. So I'm saying to you, watch out. I mean, you're not going to go from here, and people see you here, they're not going to like you. I wouldn't wear a shirt named that dedicated center because they'll refuse your service. They don't want you.